So right now I'll do a call to order, beginning with Corey, since Jack's not here.
Corey Evans here.
Diane Kennedy here.
Paul Schubert here.
Carrie Thompson here.
Okay. And I'm going to ask for a motion to go into executive session under exception number 3 to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigating position of the public body and the chair so declares. I do declare. We will be receiving an update on ongoing collective bargaining with DPW, facilities, and fire.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, roll call, please.
Corey Evans, aye.
Diane Kennedy, aye.
Paul Schubert, aye.
Carrie Thompson, aye.
Okay, so we will get the link in our emails to go into executive session, and we'll see everybody back here in a little bit.
It's on computer now. We've solved the clone.
Yeah, we've got one Peter, but let me read through the intro, and hopefully Jack will join us before we start on the agenda. Good evening, everybody. We opened the meeting a little bit earlier because we had a executive session, but I'm going to just read through our Zoom language, which is that tonight's meeting is being conducted on the Zoom platform and live streamed on Cohasset 143 TV and also on Cohasset's Facebook page. The public is invited to participate on the Zoom platform, which can be accessed using the link provided at the top of the posted agenda on the Cohasset website. Members of the board and other scheduled participants will be able to participate when called on by the chair. Board members will be able to ask questions of any participant, and all votes taken during the meeting will be by roll call. We're going to do something a little bit different today, and for future meetings, we're going to disable the Q&A feature only because it's been really challenging to monitor it, and because it's part of the public record, it's just really hard for us to manage that. So for anyone who's interested in speaking on any of the agenda items going forward, we're going to ask that you raise your hand, and we will bring you into the Zoom room and recognize you among the panelists, and then return you after you've made your comments. And that will be at the discretion of the chair, and depending on how we're rolling in meetings. But we do welcome people's participation. For public comment period, we are going to ask that anyone with public comment do the same going forward. Although if somebody, has something they want to mention during public comment that is not on the agenda, you can use the Q&A feature right now. Put your name and address in, and the agendas are going to suggest going forward that for public comment, if you could put your comments in writing in advance of the meeting, so that we can manage kind of the discussion and make sure that your point of view is being heard. It's just very difficult for us to, kind of manage the steering wheel and all the various parties that are obligated to participate in the meeting, and that being the elected members of the board. So having said that, if there's any public comment, you can either raise your hand or Q&A. I'm going to talk really slowly. I don't see anybody doing that. So let's jump right into the Earth Day. Peter Pescatori, welcome.
Thank you for putting us on the agenda. This coming Saturday, not this coming, but the 24th, a week from now, we'll be celebrating Earth Day. Restore the Earth is the theme of this year's Earth Day. And to that end, there'll be at the registration, which will be at the front of Town Hall on Saturday morning, starting at 9 o'clock on the 24th. There'll be other environmental groups represented. We'll have the Alternative Energy Committee, the Wild Cohasset people, and Safe Harbor Cohasset, which is going to be talking about some drug take-back activity. So we encourage everybody to take a moment after you register for a site to clean up and talk to the other folks at the other tables at the registration. Okay. Tracy, could you put up the my first slide there?
hold on one second. We're moving to do that.
Yeah. As part of the Earth Day, the entire event, during March, we held an online art contest for students in the town to to select the logo for this year's Earth Day celebration. And what you're going to see in a moment, I hope, is the winning piece of art, which will be on the giveaway bags that we're going to be giving away at registration, and it'll be on our website, on our webpage, on the town's website, and everywhere else that we can possibly make it happen.
That's great. Tracy had to step away. She's back to her desk, so it'll just be a second.
All right.
That's why I keep going in and out, because I'm trying to yell at, hi, goodbye, we're in the office.
That's right.
Oh, it's so much easier in person.
It is. The picture is backwards from my perspective. My room is backwards.
Oh.
I don't know how that happens, but it happens. What the heck?
Yep.
All right.
Well,
So
speaking of community art contest, I have that nice 250 logo. I think it's reading right outwardly.
you are, yeah, no, it's
Here it
great.
is, Peter.
Here we go. So this is the piece of art that we had a panel that reviewed 80 participants in the contest, and they selected this piece of art, which will be on the tote bags that we're going to be giving away at registration. And it's Restore Our Earth is the theme for the 2021, which is the 51st Earth Day celebration. And it's at the top, it's Cohasset Earth Day 2021. And this was submitted, and this is the winner, and was submitted by Ava DeSalvo, a 9th grader here in Cohasset.
It's fantastic.
So the committee, again, we have a marketing group that that ran all of this, and they created a panel of, there were 3 judges, and they reviewed all of the entries and selected this one. So congratulations, Ava. A great piece of artwork.
Thank you.
The next one, Trace, please.
We have a lot of slides tonight, so.
Yeah, I only have 3. So
Oh, good.
I'm trying to be brief.
That wasn't a hint, but.
No, I took it as a hint, though. Okay, so this is the flyer that will be on the town website landing page on 143, and we'll have it on our Facebook page and every place else. We'll have posters made up for store windows and posting at the library, the senior center, the community center, places like that, just on a bulletin board. So this is the flyer that's going to go around. And the registration is from 9 to 2:30, right in front of Town Hall, where you'll be assigned a site, get a bag, pick up your gift, and there'll be other little things that, as I said, available there, and other environmental advocates that I encourage you to talk with. They've got a lot of good stuff to tell you about. During the month of April, which we have renamed Ecohasset for the month of April, to encourage people to be more aware of our environment. We are having a environmentally themed online bingo game, which the QR, you can just take a picture of that and it'll take you right through it. And it'll be also on our page on the town website, and of course every place that we can manage to put the flyer, the QR will be available. And it's by doing Restore the Earth kinds of things, you earn a square. And when the contest is over, prizes be awarded. There'll be another panel that'll pick choose winners, and there'll be, 3 or 4 winners for, which items that they bingoed. Okay? So
That's
that's
terrific.
ongoing. It's going to run the whole month of April. Of course, we couldn't do things live with COVID, but we're trying to be creative and get people involved. The other thing that's going to happen is on Earth Day itself, which is Thursday, the 22nd. This is the bingo. This is the bingo, Earth Day bingo game. So it's Ecohasset April, and you can see, you can plant a new tree in your yard, watch a climate or environmental themed documentary, choose secondhand instead of buying something new, fit a rain barrel to your downpipe, and have a plastic-free day. There you go, bingo.
That's great.
And that's a bingo. You can do diagonal, you can do it any way you like. And we hope people will take part in this and get involved with the theme of Restore the Earth, and bingo a couple of cards to save the environment. Okay.
That's great. Thanks so much for all that creativity too. That's really amazing.
Well, I'd like to take credit for it, but it's really Marissa Manley, Deidre Riley, and Sarah Burgess, who
Takes a
who are
village, Peter.
creative geniuses and did it all. I'm more of a analog guy than a digital guy. So they carried the ball and did a fabulous job. So other events, we're hoping to have the board approve a proclamation for Arbor Day, which is on April 30th. And we are, as you know, the town was successful in being awarded Tree City USA status, and that's by the Arbor Day network. And so one of the things that was a requirement last year, which was waived, was that the board make a proclamation recognizing Arbor Day. And so I'm asking that the board consider doing that this time around as a gesture of support for planting a tree and the importance of having trees in our lives in Cohasset in particular. It's part of the culture and beauty of Cohasset. So that's a request I'd like to put on the table.
Great, and thank you. Is that something, Chris, I believe what was sent to us earlier, is that something you want action on this evening?
Well, it's April 30th, so unless you're having another meeting, it's something that I think may have to be done.
If the board's, if the board's ready to do that and somebody has it and wants to read it, it's relatively short. I have it in front of me, but if somebody else has it. Okay,
Yep.
Corey, you want to read it?
Yeah, whereas Arbor Day was first celebrated in Nebraska in 1872 with the planting of more than 1 million trees and is now celebrated throughout the nation and the world. And whereas trees can reduce erosion, cut heating and cooling costs, clean the air, provide habitat for wildlife, increase property values, and beautify our community. And whereas trees are a renewable resource, giving us paper, wood for our homes, fuel for our fires, and countless other wood products. And whereas trees, wherever they are planted, are a source of joy and renewable. Now, therefore, be it resolved that on behalf of the citizens of Cohasset, we hereby proclaim April 30th, 2021 as Arbor Day in the town of Cohasset and encourage all residents to support efforts to protect our trees and woodlands and to plant trees to promote the well-being of this and future generations.
Okay, is there a motion to accept that proclamation?
Motion to accept the proclamation.
And a second?
Second,
Okay, roll call, please.
Jack Creighton, aye.
Corey Evans, aye.
Diane Kennedy, aye.
Paul Schubert, aye.
Carrie Thompson, I.
Okay,
you.
another
Thank you
thing for
very
all of us to sign.
Thank you very much. That's really great.
Thank you, Peter.
I think it's a
Chris?
great
I- I
gesture.
will- I would just underscore that thanks to the work of Peter and the entire Open Space Committee, the town is now a Tree City USA. So we have been officially accepted to the program. We should be getting our materials hopefully this month. So
Plaque.
present them. We're getting a plaque, and I think there's some road signs and things.
Yeah, all kinds of good stuff.
And we have scheduled a tree planting for the 30th at 10, I believe it is. So any member of the board that would like to come, we're looking to plant two. We have two, I think they're called forge elms. They're hybrid elms that are resist Dutch elm disease. And we're trying to find two appropriately public, but non-utility wire free locations to plant them because they can get.
Yeah, they're very big.
So we are looking at the common as one possible location and then another prominent location. So Public Works is kind of sussing those out. So
Great.
mark that for your calendars, the 30th, 10 o'clock.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you, Brevin. One last thing.
Okay.
On Earth Day itself, on the 22nd, there is an ongoing Sustainability in STEM Virtual Earth Day Summit, which will get the link out with a separate flyer. And that's, I think, a pay thing. I think it's $5 for to join that and participate in the discussions on Worldwide Earth Day activities. So I just want to put that out. That's on our flyer as a recommendation, but we'll be promoting it separately as well.
Great.
So thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate the proclamation. It's wonderful. I think it's great for Cohasset. And
Peter,
that's all I have.
yeah, thank you and your committee for all your hard work. This is great. I can't wait to participate. Carrie, I think, has a question, and then we'll.
Yes.
No, just a quick question, Peter. I wanted to compliment you on your amazing social media you're all doing too. The art has been super creative, but the social media is so good this year. And I see a big improvement. So shout out to the town to follow them on social media. I believe it's Cohasset Earth Day on Instagram, but the
Yeah.
posts have been really good and really creative. And I'm really proud of everyone helping with the social media account.
Well, again, and they're so good because I'm not involved in them. Okay. My committee, the three lovely ladies that I mentioned, are responsible for that and do a fabulous job. And I stay out of their way. They tell me what they're going to do, and I trust that it's going to be great, and it is great.
All righty. Thanks again, Peter.
Thank you all.
Well, we'll see you on Earth Day.
Yes, we will. Good night.
Right.
Well done, Peter. Well done.
Take care.
So I did have listed on our agenda, Conservation Trust Land Preservation. That was just some clarification on their CPC article, but we're going to get to CPC articles later. So I want to keep us as on schedule as possible because we are having a joint meeting with advisory and they have a meeting after they meet with us. So next up, I'm going to turn it over to Corey, who we discussed at our last meeting, generally requests to use the common from some of the local businesses. And Corey has put together a framework for our discussion and hopefully adoption at our next meeting.
Yeah, thanks, Diane. Chris, I sent you the updated PowerPoint, so if you don't mind sharing that or allow me to share and I can just go through it. It's only a couple slides, but it'll help us keep things on track. I'm the co-host now, so okay, here we go.
It's more power than they give me.
It's quite dangerous. Okay.
Would be for me.
All right, so we'll do presentation mode here and beach ball. All right, that's not helpful. Okay, we'll just do it that way. All right, so I was in my head trying to think about how we get this easier. And this is a very, very draft. There's a lot of questions to answer. So I'll just get into it and hopefully we can have a short discussion and we can revisit this a little bit. So Cohasset Get Outside 2021 is a temporary streamlined process so we can have more events on the common without kind of having to jump through all the hoops as usual. So again, the basis for this, COVID-19 is still in our community. We've got great vaccination rates, but it's still something that we need to protect ourselves. Outdoor events are still the best way to keep people protected. We have obviously employees and business owners that want to operate as well. Being outside is by far the best way to operate safely. We have a town common, which is the ideal place to host events. People go there all the time. There's been demand for events on the common. And as we talked about last week, there's historical precedent. This is the town common. This is a common space for everyone to kind of have an opportunity to use. And as I said, again, this is a very rough draft here. So there'll be lots of questions and that's okay. So basically, the main crux of this program is a streamlined application process. As you all know, typically a business or a group in town that wants to have an event would file an application permit with us. We would then put it on an agenda, and then we would approve it. I'm suggesting that we flip that somewhat, and that the select board pre-approves a template and a revised permit application. We will then pre-approve specific dates that these events can occur on. And then businesses and groups that want to have an event can use the streamlined process under this program to apply for a date, and then the town hall can approve it. They don't have to come back to us for a date. It's much clearer. If they meet the requirements, they can have an event. If the date is open, they can have an event. It could probably be a turnaround that's only a few days versus trying to wait for a select board meeting. Obviously, since it's going to be streamlined, all the events would have to kind of fit into the same sort of box. These are just some lists of some requirements or some restrictions that have, as I've talked to some people in town, what would be the case. Obviously, we have a limited number of registrants because of COVID-19. If we avoid food service altogether, it really simplifies stuff with the Department of Health. There's also kind of a parking question. So we'd encourage participants to park in town lot, not in the town hall lot or along the street. I wouldn't say we have any cops enforcing this, however. I would just say this is something that we request of the community. That way we don't create a traffic problem on the common when there are events. One thing that's been tossed around is some sort of common space agreement. Basically the idea that if you're hosting a workout or a yoga class and somebody walks up and wants to participate, that they're not going to be turned away. This is, after all, a common space. Perhaps we allow some signage, but I don't think we should be putting up fencing or anything like that. It's really not for events that require that kind of signage. I have in here maybe no rain dates. This is an ongoing program, so if you don't get your date because of XYZ, maybe you just reapply for another date versus trying to have a rain dates program. Again, there's a lot more here. These are just some things that came up on top of my head about how to make this possible with the least amount of kind of overhead as we can. For the event location, right now, the one that we've had requests for is the Common, and that's between basically next to the pond in front of Town Hall. I know that the Common also has, kind of on the other side of the church, and that's been used in the past as well. I'm imagining right now only having one event per kind of time slot, but if we have a lot of demand, we maybe could have more. And then obviously we have to choose what dates we're going to do this on. I think that having kind of 2 slots per date, if we have an AM and a PM event, that kind of makes sense. But we can't have them every day of the week. We obviously have to cut the grass. The grass needs time to recover, those kind of things. Thursday is in use by the farmers market. So it seems to make sense to me to have Mondays and Wednesday be an initial 2 days that groups or businesses can request a date to have an event. But again, we've had some requests, but until this program launches, we don't know what the demand is. This may be, a couple days a week may be fine. We may have so much demand that we have to revisit the whole thing. So in order to kind of figure that out, I'm suggesting that after we kind of figure out some of these details, we have a kind of a 2-week registration process where businesses can apply for dates throughout the summer, and then Town Hall can kind of sift through them and give us a report. Okay, we have enough dates, or we don't have enough dates, and we can go from there. However, if somebody misses that 2-week pre-registration process, since this is a streamlined process, it should be easy enough to, as I said before, just reserve a date 1 or 2 days ahead of time if the event meets the requirements and the date is open. And then just kind of finally, to what Carrie was saying, if we do this, I would really recommend that we need to get the word out to the businesses. I don't want any businesses to feel like they've been left out. We've obviously been contacted by some, but there's going to be other businesses that would probably love to participate in this. So we need to take an active role in encouraging businesses to think creatively about how they can use it. I'd also encourage people to connect this event with other businesses in town. If you're doing an event in town, say, hey, let's meet for coffee or for lunch, or let's do something in the afternoon and grab an early dinner. Those kind of things. I think that our business community still needs traffic. And if we're going to have stuff on the common, it really should be connected to businesses in town as well. we should do our best to promote, obviously, any events that are taking place on our social media. And this is an idea that's kind of been bounced around also with our neighbors to the south and north, with the Class Chamber. So there's a lot of kind of a lot of opportunities for partnering up here. So that is kind of a express version of what's in my head. Questions, thoughts, ideas, please.
Thanks, Corey. That was really well done. I do have some questions, but let's go around and see who else. Jack?
Good, great work, Corey. I'm just so happy that you've come up with this and other people have worked hard. A couple of questions. Would this be limited, which I think it probably should be, to Cohasset businesses? I don't think we want people from out of town coming in. And the other thing is, if this takes off, which we hope it will, the wear and tear on the grass is going to be significant. And that the grass on the other side of the First Parish Church is lush. And we might consider, moving that. And it would be nice if people became aware of that that's part of the town common, because a lot of people aren't really aware of that. But well done. Thank you.
Thanks. Any other questions? Carrie?
Yeah, really fantastic presentation. I think this is really important, especially serving with you on the economic task force, Corey. I do think this can really help revive some small businesses that are struggling, especially our Cohasset businesses. I guess what I want to discuss is, are there certain areas of the common that we want to restrict to this? Do we want to choose some certain spots on the common that we think are more appropriate? Or do we want to leave the whole common as being an option? I'm a little bit, I guess I'm not sure how I feel about that in terms of restricting certain areas, or if the whole common should be fair game.
Yep. Paul?
So yeah, I think you may have to open it up and maybe restrict it, 4 weeks on one side, 4 weeks on the other, more from the turf
Yeah.
failure that you may have there. And the other question I have is, how would you do this? Would you do it with like a presumptive okay with the Board of Selectmen? Because I think the Board of Selectmen has to okay a lot of this stuff. Can we do like a presumptive delegation of authority and say there's a person that's going to schedule it? Would that be the way to do it?
Yeah, that's kind of the mechanism that I was talking with Chris Senior about. That, yeah, I mean, we've pre-approved an event, and it's a presumptive approval on that date that follows this template. So if all those things checkbox, it gets our thing. I mean, that's kind of the idea. I did have a brief chat with Brian Joyce at DPW about the grass issue, and he didn't express much concern. I'm not really expecting these events to be like 100 people playing rugby. I think if you've got 15 people doing yoga, I think the grass is going to be okay. But that's why if we have Mondays and Wednesdays, that still leaves the grass 3 days to kind of recover. And again, I think this is pretty fluid. I did have that concern, but after kind of talking to people, I said, maybe that's something we keep an eye on, but maybe not something that we need to actively worry about. And Carrie, certainly, I only kind of chose that one area because it just makes sense. But I think we have the demand for it, and if we have 2 events, maybe we've got a little bit of a traffic issue. But if there's demand for it, and someone wants to use that other part of the common, I think that's great. So.
A couple of things to Jack's point, it's one of the things I wrote down, which is, I do think, unless somebody has a compelling argument otherwise, that we should limit it to Cohasset businesses or nonprofits.
Agreed. Yeah.
I just think that makes sense. We're really trying to help our businesses out as much as we hope everybody does well all around us. I do think we should start small, and maybe it's an hour that we choose, or an hour in the morning, an hour in the afternoon on Mondays and Wednesdays. I think that's reasonable in one specific spot. And we could also alternate, I mean, people have to be flexible. Maybe they're on the pond side one time, but we can think about that. But I'd like to see if we just offer just a couple of hours a week, how that plays out before we launch into anything bigger. And then if there's a demand, we can address it separately. I would, as we write up the kind of the policies for this, I would recommend that signage be temporary. So, you know, if they have a sign and it says yoga class, they take it with them. And then the only other question I have is because the process right now is if somebody wants to do an event on the common, they put the application in and then it gets reviewed by, you know, like public safety, board of health. There's a crew that reviews events and then it comes to us. So just want to make sure that whoever does the sign off, if we give them the authority to do that, is either that same group or that same group has endorsed whoever it is that's going to stamp of approval on this.
I think it's a really good point. I mean, there's obviously multiple groups in town that need to kind of give a checkbox, do or approve an event. So if we can get them to, the more we can get into the template, the less decision making we have to do on the back end. So
Correct.
yeah, and I certainly agree with just Cohasset residents. And you know, I said the AM and PM. I was kind of thinking, well, maybe someone reserves the 9 to 11 slot. And if they want to use all 2 hours, they can. If they don't, they don't. But that way we don't have like a 9 to 10 and then a 10 to 11.
Somebody waiting on the.
Exactly. I just don't want that.
And
So-
one other thing, and then Carrie, is just, I really do think, and this is probably something we can get from public safety, whether it's fire chief or the board of health director, but is I think we need to set a limit of people. There are limits, you know, based on the state guidelines, but we're not talking 50 people. We're talking probably 15 to 25 at the most. But I think whatever that is should be in our list of requirements. Carrie?
Yeah, just to clarify, are we thinking we want this to be open to either Cohasset businesses or Cohasset residents that might own a business in a different town? So
Right.
residents, or do you know what I mean? Let's say there's a Cohasset resident that owns a business in Situate or Hingham. Should we be open to that as well, right? Like maybe we want to include either you can be a Cohasset business or a Cohasset resident.
That makes sense to me. I mean, yeah, the idea of, I think if you're a resident, you by default have right to the common. So I would absolutely say resident or you know, resident group or resident business. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we should think that through.
Yep.
I think we ought to start just local and see how this goes. If there were to be space, but there are so many people in Cohasset who have, in my investment business, do I go out and put a placard out there and say, buy amalgamated mutual funds from Jack Creighton or something? Because I don't think we want that. I think we want
Oh, it's coming
the
to that, too.
businesses. They're good mutual funds, by the way. I don't sell mutual funds. But I do think those people who've actually put bricks and mortar in the ground already and are paying taxes, substantial taxes, they ought to have first dibs. I'm not opposed to it, but I want to make sure that those people who've been struggling are given more of a leg up, because their business is in our town. But anyway, it's up to the board.
I do agree with that. I also think that maybe that narrows us into, you know, setting up what kind of businesses, because we've already ruled out any kind of food service. And we have, you know, one of the things we'll be discussing in the next 3 to 4 weeks is the what do they call the transitory licenses, the ice cream trucks and those kinds of things, you know, like then they pull up and all of a sudden things could get a little crazy for a while. But we need to think about, like, it's the idea of a yoga studio or a small gym class or a tot class or something makes sense. But at what point, you know, could somebody just put a desk up and say, I'm giving tax advice or something? So I think we need to think that through. And I don't know whether you have an economic task force meeting this week, but
We do. Yeah.
I mean,
Well,
maybe, is that something you could get weigh in from a wider group?
We
based
can
on our
certainly
comments?
do that. I think some of the conversations I had, I was impressed by the creativity. You know, I was just thinking, you know, as you said, yoga, fitness, whatever. But you know, there's also, you know, if you're a retailer, maybe you just want to do a display of what you have. I mean, and I'm okay with that. You know, so you know, I think let's not limit it too much, because there, we may see things that are very interesting. And if there's something that fits outside of the template, we can always, look at it again, I'd say. But I
Yeah.
also think the 2-week period gives us a little bit of time to say, okay, we've got these, 20 applications and they all fit nicely, or we really should think about this more and restructure it a little bit.
Yeah, Carrie?
I think this is close to bordering on a little too restrictive, in my opinion. I know that a lot of town residents who live in town are struggling as well with their own businesses, and I understand the arguments being proposed here. But I think we have to be clear, if we just are going to make it be Cohasset businesses, we have to be clear that that doesn't mean it's open to Cohasset residents, right? So I would probably prefer to expand it a little bit more, but I also understand the arguments you all are making.
I'm wondering about, like, for normal events, is an insurance requirement, right? And that's kind of
Right.
one of the things. So, I mean, if
Yes.
a resident probably doesn't have those, so I wonder if this is kind of self-limiting as it is, because if you're already a business, you already have a lot of those insurance
That might be true.
binders.
Yeah, that's, yeah.
I think that's a good point. So what I would recommend, I'll recognize you in a sec, Jack. What I would recommend, Corey, is maybe just trying to draft an actual policy based on this comments and any you get over the next, so that we can review it for our next meeting. I think it's an experiment that we're willing to try, and that, the parameters can be worked out. And then Jack, have your comment, and then I lost my
Yeah,
train of thought
my
again.
comment is, let's kind of learn to walk before we start running.
Right.
I'd like
Yeah.
to see a couple of things. Maybe Port sits there and has some of their people walk out with their fashions and walk around, or all kinds of fun, low key stuff. But I think, see what happens.
Yeah.
This is a wonderful town. I think we can be creative, and we'll see what happens. I think it's a great idea, by the way.
And I do want to stress that the liability, the additionally insured certificate has to be part of their application.
Yes.
So to Corey's point, I think that will kind of self-select.
We're also, if you don't mind, just one other thing. I'm going to follow, the town of Arlington did this very successfully, and I'm in touch with them, and I've got their documents. So we've already kind of got a pretty good template to kind of build off of and customize. So this should be a pretty easy lift.
Great. If you feel like you have enough feedback from us, I want to move us along. We're a little behind, and I want to be respectful of both our next guest and the advisory board who will be joining us after that. Chris, I think if we could promote Tom Hickey, who's here from South Shore VOTEC with a presentation. Hi, Tom.
Good evening.
Welcome.
Thank you. I recognize that you've got a pretty lengthy agenda, and I know you want to keep on pace. I did have some information sent along in advance. If it's all right with you, I'd be happy to just do a high-level review of why I'm here this evening.
Yep, that would be fantastic. Thank you.
Okay, no problem. So as you know, Cohasset is one of 8 towns that makes up our regional school district. And we are in the process of seeking from all 8 of our towns a debt authorization article. And that's going in front of all 8 of our towns at the respective spring town meetings. The state law requires that when a regional school district wants to borrow money, it has to get approval from its member towns. There are multiple ways of seeking that approval, and we're approaching each town individually and giving each community an opportunity to place it in front of their residents on the warrant. Long story short is that as the second oldest regional vocational school in the state, we've done a pretty good job of being able to infuse capital dollars in our operating budget, because we only bring our towns one number each year. When you see our number in the warrant, it includes capital, perhaps debt, transportation, and operating costs. And we've been telling our communities for the last few years that we're reaching the point where the projects we have to take on in the near future are going to be of such a scope that we can't reasonably ask our communities to absorb it in one budget cycle. And the materials that I sent along indicated that it's been recommended to us through a facilities master plan that we developed in 2018 that we have to replace roof, windows, ventilation. The original part of our building was built in 1962, and a lot of this has to do with upgrading that part of the building. We are a perennial candidate for the MSBA's core program, and just found out earlier this week that we did not make the cut for this delayed spring invitation. Despite seeking authorization and hoping to get approval from all 8 of our towns, we will still be seeking to be invited into that program, which hopefully will help bring some state dollars in to offset deep renovations, modernization, and needing a little more space. The article talks about $18.9 million, and that is how we have to present it. What's the total amount that we would be looking for? A few legitimate questions that should be asked up front are you planning to borrow this all at once? What's the impact on our community? Where is this extra borrowing going to show up? Our intention, after working with the financial advisor and bond counsel, our plan is to phase in projects over a 5-year period starting in fiscal 2023. And in doing so, if we stick to that plan, we would be doing some bond anticipation notes and essentially converting this to 2 bonds that would be in fiscal 25 and fiscal 28. Cohasset's share of any amount that we end up borrowing will be 0.81%. And that small amount is based on a 3-year look back of enrollment. So Cohasset has 7 students in our school district, and the formula that we use applies to all 8 of our towns. So when the materials I sent you, what that translates to in real dollars, your share of our capital budget for fiscal 22 is about $7,500. And so this is probably where that number might crest as high as $12,000 at the high point of our borrowing if we stick to the plan. The other reason we're coming to our towns in this way is, quite honestly, we're concerned a little about debt fatigue. If we came to you every year, at some point it would be, who's that guy again? And we hope that we can make a case that we've got a validated plan. Here's how we want to do it. We still have to be responsive to our towns and bring a number that's going to work. If we borrow too much money and then we can't get an annual budget passed, because again, we don't segregate out capital, it's all in one. I'm very mindful of the fact that borrowing too much too soon, not according to plan, and then going to a town that says, we can't afford your operating assessment,
Right.
that's going to cause a problem, because with the debt obligation, we'd have to find savings on the operating side of the budget. So we certainly aren't going to put ourselves in that position. So with your support and the support of the residents at your town meeting in late May, hopefully we'll be able to move forward with planning fiscal 22. This has no impact on fiscal 22, and hopefully begin some projects in fiscal 23. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Great. Thank you so much, Tom. That was thorough, especially with the information that we received ahead of time. Carrie had a question and
Yeah, thank you, Tom. And there's
Sure.
such a need for people to be going into the trades right now. I know that there are so many jobs available. It's really important. Thank you for doing this. My question is more just about the formula. Is the funding formula related to the amount of students each town has, or is it more, I'm a little confused. And that amount of 7, has that gone up or down in the past, or has that held steady?
Great questions. First one is our regional agreement spells out how we would handle apportioning debt. In the fiscal year in which the debt is authorized, we would take a fixed 3-year look back. So all of our communities, we would look at the enrollments from fiscal 2019 and 18. That's how we determined the 0.81%, which in this particular year translates to 7 students. That number has fluctuated slightly. I've been at the school since 1994. I've been superintendent for 10 years. Cohasset's, I can speak to my experience in the last 27 years. Cohasset's numbers have been small historically. In general, there are spots that go unused, which we then reallocate to where there's demand in other communities. But in essence, that's how the number is determined. What happens going forward? If we have 100 kids from Cohasset 5 years from now, the 0.81% doesn't change. It's a fixed amount. When we assess towns for capital, just as a quick sidebar, capital, I'm buying a vehicle, I'm buying some shop equipment, that's on a 3-year rolling average. But when you authorize debt, it's fixed. We would have done the same thing with our 8 towns back in 2010 when we had a small MSBA project to replace the roof on our original building. We would have come around 2010, put an article for the full amount, and then MSBA would back out the reimbursement, and we would have needed all 8 of our communities. So the last time we engaged in something like this, a much smaller scale, was 10 or 11 years ago. And we currently have no debt on the books.
that's terrific. Corey?
Yeah, Tom, thanks for coming by, and
Sure.
thanks for encouraging our towns to invest in this program. In your presentation, you just said that it's kind of for kind of general improvement of facilities. Are there any programs in particular that you're looking to really use this money to improve and enhance?
Thank you. 3/4 of the money that we're projecting is going to go for infrastructure, maintenance, and improvement, but about 25% of the money will hopefully be used to expand. Our master facilities plan ideally calls for about 40,000 square feet. We can't afford to do that on our own, but I think we can afford up to maybe 10,000 square feet. The good news, the good story that comes out of this is that our own vocational programs, electrical, carpentry, HVAC, metal fabrication, welding, our students and our instructors can actually take on some of the internal work. Our most popular programs are our construction and manufacturing, construction and transportation programs. So even if a student is admitted to the school, pardon me, there's also a secondary challenge that I have 30 kids a year in a freshman class of 170 who want electrical. And I have to turn a dozen to 15 kids away every year. There just isn't enough space. I appreciate you asking the question. My concise answer is I would ideally want to add 5,000 to 10,000 square feet and then reallocate some space for the programs who have student demand, labor market demand, and the equipment in the space. My HVAC program is probably my most glaring example of a program that needs a lot of space per student, but we're very short on space. So I definitely have a plan on how we would renovate and reallocate space and add some new space for that would be my priority.
Thanks. I think the most exciting thing about the slideshow you sent ahead of time was just that a lot of the students were doing a lot of the capital upgrades at
Yes.
school, which is just so impressive. And having, understanding ourselves what we have to deal with in terms of capital planning for our own facilities, we could certainly appreciate where you're coming from and wish we had a labor force amongst us as well. But alas, Paul Schubert.
Yeah, so if anyone has dealt with regional school districts, this is one of the toughest things is to try to get all of those districts that are spread out to several different towns, get all the towns to agree at once. And this is yeoman's work from the budgetary and convincing side. From Cohasset, this is a wonderful option for us because it is an option for kids from Cohasset that would not have otherwise. And so I'm really keen on supporting this because we need all the district to get the support from all of the towns that are involved. And it's sometimes a really difficult thing to do. That's all.
Great, thanks.
Thank
Any
you.
other comments? Otherwise, I think we will take action to, I believe advisory has already opined on this, Chris, and has a recommendation to town meeting.
Yeah, they recommended this unanimously.
Okay.
Nothing. So,
And what do you know what article this is on the warrant?
I was just looking for the most recent version. I think it's Article 16. Is that right, Tracy?
Article 19.
19, sorry. I was close.
So
If you're prepared, you could do it now. I mean, it's posted now. So.
I'd like to do it now, then we can send Tom on his way with happy news.
I moved it.
I'd like to move that we approve Article 19 for the South Shore VOCAD for the town meeting approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, roll call, please.
Jack Creighton, aye.
Corey Evans, aye.
Diane Kennedy, aye.
Paul Schubert, aye.
Harry Thompson, aye.
Great. That was, I think we're probably the easiest town, Tom, so good luck with everyone else.
Well done. Thank you
Good luck,
so much. I
right.
appreciate the support.
I thank you as well.
Okay.
We got to come visit you
Thanks,
as soon
Chris.
as we're able.
Yes, I'd love to have you.
We would love to come.
Lunch in the restaurant and a tour. Absolutely.
Amen. Thank you.
Thanks again.
Okay, now we have a joint meeting with the advisory committee. So if we could promote the advisory committee, this is for the purposes of the review of the school budget. And we also have members of the school administration and school committee to promote as well. So we'll let that take its course for just a few seconds.
Big Zoom meeting.
It's going to be big. once we see Rob. Okay. I think we have everybody from advisory. So why don't I ask Rob to reveal himself and open his meeting? And while Rob's revealing himself, Craig, do you have are you posted? Are you going to call your meeting to order as well?
I sure am, Madam Chairperson.
Okay, if you, I'll let Rob do that first, and then I'll turn it over to you, Craig, to do the same thing, and then we'll get rolling. Thank you.
Thanks, Diane. Can you hear me okay?
We can't see you though.
Well, we can fix that. It's not going to improve, it's not going to improve the meeting any, but
There's so many people here, Rob, we won't even be able to.
why am I not appearing? Can you see me? I can't see me.
We can't see you.
I've
You have
unstopped
a
my
little, do
video.
you have one of those little, yes, little sliders that go across the camera at the top?
No. Hang on. I think I might know what the problem is. For goodness sake. All right, well, I don't want to,
There you
there
go.
I am. Like I said, doesn't make anything better. So I will open the advisory committee meeting. So the usual preface, pursuant to GL Chapter 30A, Section 20B, and following Governor Baker's declaration of a state of emergency in the Commonwealth arising from the COVID-19 pandemic, the advisory committee will meet virtually utilizing Zoom technology, and all votes will be taken by a roll call vote. So I should take the attendance of the committee. So Gina Stino.
Present.
Fran Collins. Fran is not here. Jean Healy. Is not here. Helene Lieb. I see Helene, I don't hear Helene. I see Fran, I don't hear Fran.
And Jean is here as well, Jean Dippold.
Good. All right. Meg Wheeler,
Present.
Lee Jenkins,
Yeah, present.
who am I overlooking? Mary McGoldrick,
Present.
unthinkable. And Rob Hillman is present. So the meeting, the advisory committee meeting is open. We're noticed for the purpose in this meeting of participating in a warrant article review regarding the budget, specifically the school department budget. Just for anyone watching, when this portion of your meeting ends, we'll adjourn or perhaps suspend our meeting, and there's a second link posted because the advisory committee intends to continue and do some business with the open warrant articles that we have not yet voted on. So we'll close here and open up elsewhere.
Great, thank you. And I'll turn it over now to School Committee Chairman Craig McClellan to open his meeting.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. I hereby call to order the April 13, 2021 joint meeting of the Cohasset School Committee, Cohasset Select Board, and the Cohasset Advisory Committee. This meeting, this otherwise in-person public meeting, as with all of our recent meetings, is being conducted virtually via Zoom, given the state of emergency in this Commonwealth. Would all committee members present please indicate so in roll call? Mrs. Caleri.
Present.
Mr. Kearney. Mrs. Marr.
Present.
Mrs. St. Ange.
Present.
And present Craig McClellan. The meeting is, school committee meeting is called to order as of 7:17 p.m. and all members, with the exception of Paul Kearney, are present. Thank you, Madam Chairperson.
Great, thank you. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Sullivan, school superintendent, and to kind of walk us through. I know there's a lot of slides, and hopefully you can just hit the meaty pieces first,
Sure.
primarily. And thank you and welcome.
No, my pleasure, and thank you to the select persons and also to advisory for being here and for everything you do. If we could have Sue Owen, who's our Director of Finance and Operations, have the ability to be a co-host, that would be helpful as we could share our slides.
So Pat, both you and Susan should be co-hosts.
Okay, so I introduce ourselves then. Of course, I'm Dr. Patrick Sullivan, Superintendent of Schools, and I'm here with Susan Owen, who is our Director of Finance and Operations, and Dr. Leslie Scollins, who I believe is having some trouble with her camera, but she is here as well. Dr. Scollins, can you hear us? Possibly not here, but maybe Dr. Scollins, if you can, maybe you can go in and go out and try to come back in, and perhaps that'll give you. There you go.
I'm here. I just got promoted, so now.
Oh, there you go. Okay, super. All right. So we're all here, and thank you for your patience with that. So yeah, once just making sure, Sue, are you able to share your screen? If you can't, I can do it. Just let me know.
Yes. I'm bringing it up right now. Hold on. Whoop, it's not what I wanted.
There we go. Okay, wonderful. So we're very happy to walk you through our FY22 budget for your consideration. To start off, Sue, if you'd advance one slide, maybe you can just do it in presentation mode. Just hit from beginning. Present. There you go. Okay. We'll start off with just talking a little bit about the FY22 budget priorities. And I should preface this with saying that we're in the process of building our next strategic plan. We're at the ending of a 5-year strategic plan. And of course, our strategic plans, as all strategic plans do in an organization, guide us from beginning to end. In other words, our strategic plan governs our school improvement plans, which govern our teacher goals. And so it's a very important process for us. And we're actually creating a 3-year plan because we're finding that things are moving so quickly. We want to make sure that we have a period that covers everything that we have as a need. But we have put together a list of priorities here that we feel confident will transition into our next strategic plan. And actually, the data that we've accumulated so far supports that. All of these are very much data-based and very much tie in with the work we've been doing in Cohasset schools for some time. The first budget priority that you'll see present in all of this is elementary numeracy. And this comes particularly from some of the data that shows that although we achieve very well in our MCAS and our other data points, that our math scores aren't exactly where we'd love them to be. And we needed a fresh look at our elementary numeracy in particular. So within the last couple of years, we looked very closely at our data, and we adopted, with some great collaborative work, a program called Elementary Bridges Math Program for all of our elementary students, K through grade 5. And of course, that eventually is going to transition, and it's in the process of transitioning into our upper grades. But in order to develop that appropriately, we need to continue with our training of our staff and our resourcing for our students. Similarly, instructional technology, which is something that we're really looking at growing, and in some cases beginning to implement in our district. This includes a computer science program that will thrive throughout all of our grade levels. And we did venture into this with the hiring recently of our Director of Technology and Digital Learning. And you will see that we have a position in our budget this particular year that both includes the coaching of staff to progress our instructional technology. And also, this person will be doing some of our computer science work, in particular at the middle school. But that's, of course, with the pandemic, our instructional technology has been at the forefront of everything we're doing. but it is something that we feel very strongly needs to grow in our district, and we're moving in that direction. Social emotional learning, we've invested quite a lot in making sure that our students' wellness and mental health is protected and supported. We're lucky to have a group such as Safe Harbors with us in our town that works closely with us, but we're also advancing what we have to offer our students. At the elementary level, we've been working with a program called Responsive Classroom, and then we're very much trying to implement the CASEL competencies for social emotional learning within all of our curricula. So you'll see that present in what we're advocating for as well, in the area of social emotional learning. Safety and facilities, of course, safety has been very much paramount this particular year because of all the needs around the pandemic, but we need to make sure that we are attending to our safety needs within the pandemic and then as we transition out, and how the two tie into one another. And then the last is addressing learning gaps. And I really wish we hadn't called it learning gaps, but instead talked about unfinished learning. Because what we're finding is that as we really dipstick now and get a sense for where students are, there are some definite needs, but we also have learned that, you know, a lot of our students are still growing, and we're still creating environments, even though we've had a difficult environment to do it in with the pandemic, that have fostered student learning. So we're looking to make sure that our budgetary concerns and priorities rather address our unfinished learning as we move forward into FY22. So at this point now, I'll turn it over to Sue Owen, who again is our Director of Finance and Operations, to go through some of the budget numbers with you. And we're just again doing kind of a quick overview. And then as we get to our priorities, and we look at the data that actually formulated our what we're asking for this year, I'm going to have Dr. Scollins lean in and help us with some of that, as her role is assistant superintendent in charge of curriculum instruction and assessment. A lot of those are tied into that. So take it away, Sue.
Sue, before yeah, good evening. No, before you start, I just want to tell the select board members and advisory, because I know a lot of this stuff is meaty and this is our presentation and time to ask questions. If you have a question, use the raise hand feature throughout, and we'll try to stop after every slide if there's a question or two. Is that all right with you?
If we go too fast, just slow us down. We'll be glad to answer questions whenever you see fit, Madam Chairperson.
Okay, and Rob, if you don't mind, if I see one of your guys, I might call on you, or but if you see them first, go right ahead and identify them if they have a question.
Yeah, please do. Otherwise, it's chaos.
Yeah, thank you.
Madam Chairperson, if I may, I just do want to note on the record, while Mr. Kearney isn't officially in attendance on the meeting, he is watching via Facebook, so he is participating in that way. He wasn't able to, because of technological problems, he wasn't able to use Zoom, but I just wanted everyone to know that Mr. Kearney is watching and was very much involved in the process.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Sue, it's the floor is yours.
Thank you. So good evening. Thank you everyone for having us tonight. First time in front of everybody, so hopefully I'll do okay. This is just a summary of what the numbers look like. So for FY21, the appropriated budget was $20,960,856. And then I kind of broke it down by contractual salary obligations, or what we call rollover costs, was $666,442. I gave you a percentage of the budget there. We had a decrease in circuit breaker funding that we need to make up. So our circuit breaker offset some of our school budget costs. And we had $125,000 less this year in reimbursements. So we had to come up with or add in $125,000 to replace what we didn't get in circuit breaker. We also had a small decrease in special education tuitions, which is surprising, but it was about $8,000. We've had several longtime teachers put in their retirement, so we've projected retirement savings of about $140,000. The more senior teachers leave and we have some new teachers come in, so some savings in salaries there. You'll see in our next slide, or a few slides up, we have staffing and other requests, which was about $255,000. And then we had to make some reductions in order to meet the bottom line. And that the reductions were about $175,000. So the total FY 2022 requested budget is $21,684,432, which is a 3.45% increase, which is what was allocated by the town. This slide shows the increases to our budget, what we did, what our needs were. So we had a 0.5 increase to a high school social studies teacher for $40,000. We added a 1.0 middle school reading specialist, which was desperately needed. We added a computer science / technology specialist at the middle high school for $60,000. And we added a grade 7 special education teacher at the middle school for $70,000. And we're trying to we would love to have full day kindergarten be free, but that's about a $300,000 budget impact. So we're going to begin the process of trying to reduce our full day kindergarten tuitions by building $25,000 into our budget, which will reduce some of the tuitions by $25,000 divided by however many families enroll in kindergarten for next year. So our staffing and our other requests were approximately $255,000 or 1.22%.
We will get into some of the data, just a brief overview of these that drove these positions in just a little bit.
So obviously add and stay within our means, we had to reduce. So we have a retirement at the middle school of a social studies teacher. Based on enrollment, we don't need to replace it as a 1.0. We only need to replace a half-time social studies teacher. So there was a savings of $57,000 there. We had one educational support professional at the Osgood Elementary School that we didn't fill this current year. So because we didn't fill it, we realized that it probably wasn't needed. So there's a savings of $22,000 there. The next one is a 0.5 elementary teacher moved to Metco grant. So we're not reducing anyone. What we're doing is we're taking a 1.0 elementary teacher and we're funding half of that teacher through the Metco grant because we have Metco students in the elementary schools. So we're not reducing anything, we're just shifting the funding.
And our Metco grant was particularly robust this year, as is helpful in this.
We also did a look historically into our utilities, and based on the last 5 years, we thought we could decrease our utilities budget by about a conservative $30,000. And then as a team, we all chipped in basically and decided, okay, in order to meet the bottom line, we needed to decrease in other areas. We did not want to cut staff. We did not want anyone to lose their jobs. So we decreased some of our supplies and materials district-wide, and we're just being a lot more careful in our spending on supplies and materials. So that's where the $175,000 in savings came from.
Great. Sue, I'm going to stop you there. Mary McGoldrick has a question from the advisory board.
Yeah, Sue, thank you. Just to back up a little bit regarding the kindergarten tuition, where are we in terms of the state mandating full day, how long we can charge for it, how much a part of your budget is that eventually you'll need to make up when there's not tuition being paid?
So the whole program is a little over $600,000. The school budget is absorbing $300,000, and then the parents are absorbing the other $300,000. So
Okay.
it's going to take us a few years at least to roll it all into our budget to make it become free full day.
Okay.
Any other questions before we move on? Rob Hillman, Chair of Advisory.
Thanks, Diane. When you described the current budget at $21,684,000 and with an increase of 3.45%, you referred to that as what was allocated to us by the town. Can you describe the process, what that means, who did the allocating and how?
Good question. So
Thank you.
let me think about this. I might need a little help with this one. So based on Don Paya and Chris Senior and his team going through revenues and local receipts and what the state is going to give us and the cherry sheet and the chapter 70. Based on all that, they come to a decision of, okay, what's the bottom line of what the town is going to be allocated from all their resources. And then I believe it's divided up amongst the different departments within the town, which is how the number that we're allocated is given to us. So we started out with a much higher budget, obviously, because we went in with, what do we feel we need? And we had to, it was probably up over 5%, but we knew we had to slim back and decide what our priorities were. I don't know if that answers your question.
I know Don Pyatt just revealed himself. Rob, do you have a follow-up question before we turn it to Don? And then I see Corey has a question after that.
I did just, and if it's out of sequence, it can be let go for later, but you did in that same explanation identify a 3.45% budget increase across the department budget, which I was wondering what the drivers were that put it at 3.45%.
Corey, are you okay to wait if I ask Don to see if he wants to weigh in?
Sure. Yep.
Don, did you want to help answer that question?
Please.
Yeah, I mean, Susan pretty much covered it. As we've gone through, presented to Select Board Advisory. Chris and I, we go through a bit of a process to identify what our increase from our tax levy calculation is, local receipts, new growth, state aid, as Sue mentioned, and then take a look at all the shared costs, central IT, pension, healthcare. Then we come up to essentially total revenues less those shared costs, and then what the difference is compared to last year, and that's essentially our new revenue for the year. And that is then shared between the school department, pardon me, and all other town departments. 61% to the school, 39% to the town. And that percentage is not written, it's not anything documented. This is essentially something that's been carried for a number of years, I believe, from you remember a long range planning group that was around when I first started. Has essentially been a percent allocation that's lived since even before I started here. And really, I think that percentage is really just based on payroll. I just took a look back a few weeks ago at the last 4 or 5 years. And when you compare town and school payrolls based on the budgets, it's almost dead on 61%, 39%. So I think that split must have come up as a calculation and allocation based on payroll needs is what I would guess.
Thank you.
Corey?
This isn't nearly as technical. Dr. Sullivan, you began at the beginning of the presentation talking about, the need for focus on, especially mathematics and science, performance in the schools. I did a kind of brief overview of the budget. It wasn't quite clear if in the budget you're allocating existing resources to solve this problem or to increase, our, student performance in that area. Can you speak to a little bit about that?
Yeah, basically, and actually, Dr. Scollins can certainly help with this. We adopted a elementary math program called Bridges, which was a significant one-time investment, but the professional development needs of that are significant. So do you want to speak to that a little bit, Dr. Scollins?
I do, thank you. So when we adopted the program, we didn't realize that COVID was going to happen. And so we implemented it this year. And I guess probably if we were able to, I would have held off, but we needed the program. The program we were working with had no longer existed for us in the format it was. So we went ahead and implemented Bridges from the Math Learning Center. And it's really, when you implement a new program, it's not just a one-year rollout. It takes a couple of years for the staff to really become comfortable, and it spirals up. So there's a lot of continuous work that needs to happen. But with COVID and teaching in a hybrid, the company was very good about modifying it for our students. But next year, we still want to continue that because we want to continue to grow our students. And our first year, although it was an amazing rollout and the students and teachers are very happy with the program and what we're seeing is outstanding, it's still going to need a little more time to really grab hold. I hope, is that kind of what you were asking about, Mr. Evans?
Yeah, I think it clarifies. So it's a change in program primarily. Not necessarily at this point an increase in resources, it sounds like.
No.
Not an increase in staffing, so to speak, but the resources are attached to this elementary program. And we also need to look at how that transitions up as well. That was part of our rollout. We determined we'd start at the elementary, but we also have to look at, how this elementary program leads into our programming at the middle and the high school.
And that will be continuing that work this year.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
We have 2 additional questions from advisory board members. So Helene Lieb first, and then Jean Dippold second. You unmuting, Helene?
Do that? Yes.
There you go.
Yes, I got it. On Dr. Leslie Scullin, I was wondering about the interface of this program, this math program, with technology. Where I graduated from, Northwestern University, we developed the University of Chicago Math Series. And right now they have a new development in terms of math education that's very STEM and it's very digital oriented by a professor who's working in the School of, in Education and Technology there. And I was wondering how this program in the elementary, in middle school interfaces, like I said, with digital technology, which has really been important in developing math and science skills, especially math.
So this does have an online component. This is also very much a hands-on experience for our students. So it's a combination of both. Allowing for students to make that transition, but especially as those younger years from a developmental perspective, we really want them to have multiple opportunities to be able to solve math problems and understand those fundamental pieces. So the program itself also has really stepped up during COVID and really increased its online resources and its platforms for our teachers and for our students. So I think that as much as the Chicago has a higher probably platform around digital learning, this has a combination of both. And within the units are also STEM units. So there's that interconnectivity with math, science, and really literacy. So we're really across the board, really trying to interconnect all our content because it makes more sense for students if they can see those interconnectivities and those real world applications. So it's teachers are extremely happy with it. The depth of knowledge that the students are acquiring. Certainly we had some concerns where we were all remote last year, this year coming back as a hybrid, and then, increasing our time. We were certainly concerned about what it would look like for our students. But when quick conversations with teachers, and we'll be looking at more data in the next couple of weeks as we're assessing students and looking at that data, we're seeing that the students' depth of knowledge is greater than the previous programs. So that itself is such a win, and especially in these times. So teachers are very, very confident that having a full year next year, we're going to see a tremendous amount of growth in our students' ability to have those higher order thinking and those real concrete understandings of what is numeracy, what is mathematics, what is problem solving, because that's really what we want for our students.
And also, Mrs. Lee, thank you for acknowledging the connection between digital learning potential and science and math achievement. That's one of the chief reasons that we brought on our Director of Technology and Digital Learning this year. And also one of the reasons we're advocating for this technology position at our middle and high school level, which will complement our existing position at the elementary level. So you're really, I think very much tied into our hopes for really pairing technology with science and math, other subjects too, but I think particularly in that way, and coaching our educators to be able to make those connections with the students. So that was a really, and that actually ties a bit into your question, Mr. Evans, as well, in terms of resources.
Thank you.
I'll go to Jean Dippold from the advisory board, and then select board member Paul Schubert. Go ahead, Jean.
Hi, I'm not sure who this should be directed to. Maybe you, Ms. Owens, or maybe you, Dr. Sullivan. I just had a general question about the overall budget, and maybe this is going to be answered in the later slides I saw, but the enrollment numbers have obviously been way down this year. There's a lot of people homeschooling, or they've left for private school because the private schools were fully open in terms of in-person. And so my question is whether the staffing and the overall budget, but most importantly, the decisions about teacher staffing were made based on the enrollment from this year, or are you projecting that we sort of return back to the, trajectory that the enrollment was on, but for the pandemic?
Yeah, you're not wrong in the thought that we did have more homeschool applications than we typically have. We did not have a significant amount of folks who went into our remote only program, which was, we outsourced through a group called TECA. But to really answer your question, we have considered that those folks will be coming back, and that is part of our projections and our thinking in terms of our needs. So yeah, we did consider that.
Okay, a weird year. Like, for example, my daughter's in the 5th grade and there's one whole class that I think is gone, doing thing, but I expect that those children will return.
It is a strange year, and actually some of the state funding was calculated on the current enrollments, which is somewhat frustrating because, as you pointed out, that is not a reality when our students all do come back. Thankfully, I don't think it's going to impact us in Cohasset quite as much, but we were projecting that we would receive these students back, and we do believe we will.
I want to be mindful of the time in the presentation. So I think these questions are really good, and I think a lot of the answers are going to be seen going forward in the presentation. But we have a question from Paul Schubert, and then Jack Creighton, and then we'll go back to the presentation.
So a quick question, the utilities based on historical data, I just hope that, mid-year, as everything goes back to full duty, full use, open 100% after vaccination programs go through, that's not an underestimate for utilities, as gas, electricity, and water will probably be potential higher costs in mid-year, just to make sure there is some potential flexibility in the budget. That's all. I'm done.
Certainly. Thank you, Dr. Schubert.
Thanks. Jack Creighton?
Yeah, hi. One of
I think we lost his volume.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes, I think we missed that, Mr. Creighton.
Okay, that's good. I think we both hit unmute at the same time. Anyway, I think what a metric that would be helpful is the ratio between the budget and the teachers, and the budget and the administrative staff. And this is a metric that I think probably should be done every year, so the citizens and the parents know what is the cost per student, what is the cost for teaching versus the cost for administration. And I mean, that's a basic budgeting tool. So is it possible to get that information? Not now, but down the line.
I believe it's in this presentation.
Yeah, we do have a slide that references that, but we also, we did share, or I believe we were going to share the line items with document with you as well. So I believe you'd have that to look at.
I think
Does
those
that
arrive.
break out the ratio of the cost?
I think Sue is correct. I think there's a slide in here that breaks it down, comparing the categories, not necessarily from year to year though.
So Sue,
it would give the cost per student.
Yes.
Okay, That's fine. Thank you. It's well done.
Well, you're welcome.
Sue, I'll turn it back to you, and these questions have been great, so keep taking notes, and we'll stop again at the next break. Go ahead.
This sheet is just a summary of everything we just talked about, just in front of you in one place, so you can see the steps and lanes, the decreases, the staffing requests, the reductions, what the 21 budget was, what the 22 budget projection is, and the 3.45. So this is just a brief summary of it all in one place. This, I believe, is what you were asking for. This is the latest on what's on DESI's website. So this is the FY19 is the most current. It's the FY19 per pupil spending compared to the state average. So I think that's what you were looking for, and it breaks it down.
Yes.
Administration, teachers, it goes through the whole, this comes right off the DESI's website. They have yet to post FY20 unless they posted it in the last week. But I'm not sure. So it gives you the percentages and the comparison to the state.
In a couple of areas here that you can see we're lower than the state. You can see our instructional materials, equipment, and technology, which is, of course, something we're advocating for. And then what was the other one that was lower here?
Instructional leadership? No.
No.
Our professional development is a little bit lower, Dr. Sullivan, but we do offer.
No, it was pupil services. I apologize.
Oh, that's right.
My eyes were failing me. My pupils were failing us. The pupil services, the idea of providing more social emotional supports for our students, you can see, is at a lower point than the state average. And it's not a surprise. That's an area we feel we need to add to, and we have been adding over the last couple of years. Apologize for that.
Are these numbers based on the budget, the operating budgeted amounts, or, I know there's other, you get Metco funds, those aren't reflected in the budget number that we saw on the previous page.
No.
So are the per pupil spending, does that account for those other buckets of income?
I believe everything that's coming through DESI, yes.
And it is important that everyone knows this is FY19 per pupil spending, because that's what we have the data for. But you can see the buckets that we're trying to fill, and it does align with what we have in this presentation.
Great. Carry on.
So this is the enrollment projection. Well, I shouldn't say projection, historical. So it's based on October 1 enrollment, which is what we have to report to the state every October 1st. So it gives you an idea back to from FY17 all the way through 22. And the changes from year to year.
Okay.
Whoops. This is a breakdown of our FTEs, which is full-time equivalencies. I'm not sure what it's looked like in the past. I broke it down by grouping, and I broke it down by funding source, because a lot of times we don't realize or see that the school budget funds about 216 FTEs, but our grants fund about 14 FTEs, and our revolving funds support about 24.7 FTEs. So the total FTEs for the districts is about 254. And it's broken down, like I said, it goes into the bus right from administrators to specialists to the nurses to the bus drivers. So you can see bus drivers, for example, half of them are paid out of the school budget and half of them are paid from the transportation revolving account. 2 of them are paid from the Metco grant because they're Metco buses. And the same for, I was trying to think, kindergarten is broken down the same way, but they're not broken down by grades here, so it wouldn't show that way.
It's important to remember that 254.91 is not the amount of employees. It's not the head count. This is the full-time equivalencies. So it's the employees that create a full-time employee. So that I could totally understand it potentially being confusing between slide 9 and our next slide, but that's the difference, just so everyone understands that.
Okay, next, there we go. This is just a head count.
count,
This is
got it.
truly exactly what that is. It's a head count. So even though someone might be a 0.3 or a 0.5 in our budget, that's an FTE. As a head count, they're counted as one body. So this is how many bodies or heads we have within the district.
Great.
A little historical, whoop. Let's go back. Okay, maybe not. Previous. Sorry about that. Circuit breaker. So this is just a historical on circuit breaker and what we have received over the past several years. Circuit breaker is reimbursement on our special ed tuitions. We're given a percentage each year, and you can see probably halfway through it will tell you the percent of reimbursement. And as I noted in the beginning, that we had to make up a difference of about $125,000 in the decrease in circuit breaker. You can see we went from 75% reimbursement to 70%. So we went from 726,000 to about 605, which is where the 125 difference came in. And then we get into just some of the school priorities. I don't know, Leslie, is this where you want to?
No, I'll talk about these a little bit and then hand
Okay.
it off to Dr. Scollins. And really, we don't need to get into each of these. The point of this is just so you can see that the school priorities really line up with our overarching district priorities for FY22. They're a little different as you go through them, but you can see the themes of social emotional support for students, a multi-tiered system of support, which is something that we're really diving into. MTSS, it was RTI, moved over to MTSS for those people who are familiar with that. You'll see the curriculum, math curriculum at the elementaries, and then of course a focus on our technology instruction. So you can just flick through these, Sue, so they can see each school. I don't think I need to get into the particulars, and then I'll let Dr. Scollins kind of move on with the data behind our decisions. You just hit the arrows, Sue, like the arrows on your computer. There you go. Deer Hill, 3 to 5 school, of course. It's the middle school.
High school.
And the high school. So I'll leave it to Dr. Scollins to talk a little bit about our positions that we've already introduced, but this is sort of the data behind them, some of the data behind them.
Right. Thank you very much. So the positions, just as a review quickly, the middle school is adding a reading specialist, a full-time reading specialist, and also a special education teacher. And the high school is adding a 0.5 to make a 1.0 social studies teacher. And the middle school and the high school will be sharing a computer science instructional technology specialist, and that will be full-time. Thank you, Sue. So first, the reading specialist. And you saw, if you looked quickly at those slides, I know we went through them very quickly, but you saw MTSS, and Dr. Sullivan referred to it. That's the multi-tiered system of support, or in past, it was response to intervention, or RTI. And we are working to grow that system. It's a way of making sure that students who have not achieved where we want them to be yet, they have the opportunity to get extra support. And we use data to target those areas, and then we use explicit instruction to help those students, and then progress monitor. So, so having a reading specialist will allow us to really grow that at the middle school level. And also, we have reading specialists at both elementary schools. And so there are students that are getting reading support. We'd like to continue that up into the middle school. Just because they've left 5th grade doesn't mean that students still don't need support, and still don't, and they still may need some work around really grasping strategies around reading comprehension. So adding that reading specialist will allow us to do that. And on top of that, really grow our screenings and assessments for reading. So the slides I'm going to show you next need a little prep. These are MCAS scores and student growth percentiles from 2017, 2019. So this is older data. We didn't have MCAS last year. We are having them this year. This all happened before our new middle school team. The other thing I want you to look at is this is a very much a zoomed in graph. So I want you to just kind of look at the numbers. These are the achievement scores of students, and it's our grades 6th, 7th, and 8th. If you look at the numbers, it starts at 475 on the bottom and goes up to 515. So it's not an enormous number. However, what we do want you to notice is that if you look at our students in blue, that's all students. So at 6th grade, you can see their score that they achieved at 513. And then you can see in middle school, it dips down to 503 and then up to 507. We're noticing that that dip occurs in 7th grade. There's a couple of reasons for that. One is that students in 7th grade, the assessment is really inference-based, and that's a higher order thinking skill for students, and it's a kind of a little bit of a different test. And on top of that, we also notice that where we don't have that reading support, that could be impacting it also. So that top is our blue. If you look at the yellow, that's the state average of our scores. You can see that our students are scoring very well. The majority of our students meet expectations or exceed expectations. The students in the red are our students who received reading support in 5th grade. Their scores are lower than the state average, and there is still a dip because, again, that test is a little bit more challenging and has that inference component and is asking students to really critically think a little bit differently. So this data really makes us realize that we do need to continue that support from elementary into the middle school so we don't see that big dip, because we'll be able to catch students or work with those students that we already know still need more work on learning strategies on how to break down text, how to infer, some of those higher order thinking skills. Any questions about that slide? Because it is a very, it's just an interesting slide.
Thank you.
Good. Okay. So here's the next one. This is student growth percentile. This looks like a really big dip. Again, I want you to look at the scale. It's a 30 on the bottom, 60 up top. This is growth percentile. And just a really quick explanation of what that is that when students take the MCAS, they are put in like cohorts. So for example, let's say the students got 560 is their score. They're now going to look at that group of students over time. So they're going to look at that group of students who got that 560. They're going to see what happens. How many had high growth? How many had mid-level growth? How many had low growth?
Dr. Scollins, that's across the state.
Correct, right? So it takes all the students and puts them all into one pile, in one cohort. But they look at them over time and they look at them in specific cohorts. So that's what the student growth percentile is. It's not percentage, it's percentile. And we want our students to be about between 40 and 60. That's solid growth for percentile for students. And you can see that our growth is very good in 6th grade. If you look at the blue line, that's us, our general ed students, are all students at the middle school. And then if you look at the yellow, that's always going to be 50 because it's the state. And then the red line is our students who had reading support in 5th grade. And again, you can see that drop down. We fall right below the 40. So although our students achieve really well and their growth is okay, we really want to see high achievement scores and high growth.
Yeah, we want to see those lines going across or up,
Correct.
not down.
Right.
And you can see that happening with all our kids. Really.
Exactly. So with having reading support in there, we'll be able to work with our students 6th and 7th and in 8th grade, shoring up some of those strategies that they need for those higher order thinking scores. And even students who still sometimes are having some difficulty even decoding or with word sense, trying to figure those things out. So we would anticipate that this will level itself off or increase our reading scores and our comprehension for our students.
Good.
Great.
All right. Any other questions about those? Those are the two tricky slides. All right. And then our additional position at the middle school is a secondary special education teacher. We need to add an additional section for ELA, math, and the support center for the class of 2026. In addition, we want to increase and expand our co-teaching classes. Our co-teaching classes are classrooms that have a general ed teacher and a special education teacher, and they work in concert to make sure that all students get what they need. But our students who are on IEPs, that their goals are being met. And we would like to grow that because we're seeing that our students in the class all benefit, because now you have two teachers who are helping our students, and the groupings can be flexible, so students are coming in and out as they need support within the classroom. And so this is something that the district's been committed to, and we have at the middle, at the elementary, middle, and at the high school. So having that additional piece fills some need that we have, plus it will allow us to loop as students, as that bubble moves up. That could be a possibility that this class moves.
And just to make that,
goes into the high school.
just to make that clear, Dr. Scollins, this is a lot of it's driven by this particular
Yes.
grade level.
Yes, the need for
and
this.
the needs of those students
Correct.
in terms of special education, and that will
Correct.
loop up as
Correct.
those students move. So this person would move with them potentially.
Exactly. Thank you for clarification. All right, the next one. Thank you, Sue. And then increasing the social studies teachers from a 5.0 to a 1.0. So there's been a significant increase in the students' desires to take social studies classes. And we're a small district, so we don't often have all of the offerings that the students would like. So we do want to increase that. In addition, our AP courses, one of the things that's really nice about Cohasset is that you do not have to have a certain criteria to go into AP classes. Lots of districts, you have to have a certain GPA, you have to have a certain course load, all different things. We don't do that here. So that really opens up AP opportunities for our students, which I personally love because it allows a student to challenge themselves and to grow without a ceiling, which is what we want. And our children do exceptionally well. And in particular in social studies, our students score very high. When you are taking your AP, for those of you that don't know, you get a 1 through 5. And in order for it to count, you have to have at least a 3. Our macroeconomics course 2 years ago, last year was very different. We had 25 students take that course. We had 1 student get a 4 and the 24 other students got a 5. And if you look at our US history, we had the majority of students got a 4 or a 5. So we are very fortunate that our students do really well, but we need to be able to provide that for them. And if we have this additional person, this additional 0.5, we could also potentially offer microeconomics, and students have been asking for that. They love the macroeconomics. They would really like the opportunity for micro. And in addition, we have some new standards. So there's the recommended for 2 US history courses, 2 world history courses, the economic electives over 4 years. So we want to make sure that we can have those opportunities and that they align to the recommendations from the state. And then we have the middle school, high school computer science teacher and instructional technology specialist. This is something that has been, especially the computer science, has definitely been a focus for the school committee and for the district for some time. So this position would be divided for the instructional technology specialist for 0.5 and then computer science teacher for 0.5. The instructional technology specialist would be shared between both the middle and the high school, and it would be similar to the position at the elementary level. And that instructional technology specialist works with teachers, models lessons, provides resources to teachers so that they can integrate technology and embed it in their lessons. And then the computer science teacher would continue what's already begun at the elementary level in computer science, and it would provide the opportunity for 6th graders and possibly 7th graders to have an elective choice between art and computer programming. And then the intention is that eventually that instructional technology specialist position would grow from 5.5 to a 1.0, and the computer science teacher would become a 1.0 and move its way up into the high school, because we really do need to grow that program. And so this is the beginnings of, and these people will work together with Lisa Radden, our Director of Technology and Digital Learning. So this will kind of start to build that team that will allow us to really grow our technology and our computer science offerings.
Great. I see Helene Lieb from Advisory has a question.
Is the plan to bring back AP Computer Science? We had it in the past.
So I would say yes. I think that that's part of why we have Ms. Radden here to help us with all of that and really grow those pieces. You know,
Yeah, no, we've been able to offer that in a virtual high school format recently, but I would completely agree with the desire and kind of aim to get that to happen here.
Yeah, and that's and Ms. Radden is working with the digital learning team and really, you know, building out the vision and then growing this.
Thanks.
Right. Thank you.
So just to kind of conclude, Sue, I can cover these if you want, but you can certainly add in just some future budget concerns. As we've discussed, we are moving to introduce free full-day kindergarten for all. That's going to be something that we definitely are pointing our budget priorities towards. We are developing a new 3-year strategic plan, which we believe definitely fits all of this information in. And then we have an ongoing need to support the emotional, social emotional learning and the mental health and wellness needs of our students. I think we're already building that pretty well. Always looking at enrollment trends. We've mentioned the tech integration, and then as we just talked about, the computer science curriculum. So Sue, I think you can maybe stop share now, and we'll take any questions so we can see everybody on the screen. And thank you very much for your attention to that long but hopefully thorough presentation.
Great, thank you for that and for the backup information and getting the slides out ahead of time. We'll entertain questions. Mary McGoldrick from Advisory.
Yes, I'm not sure who is best to answer, but I know that a special education fund was created. I think it was right after I left school committee. I just wondered how much is put into that budget, and then what happens to it if you don't need it at the end of the year.
The Stabilization Fund, I believe.
Yes, yes. Thank
Sue, you want to talk about that? I know you and Barbara meet about. Barbara is our new Director of Student Services. So Sue and Barbara meet, as you know, quite often. So go ahead, Sue.
So the Sped Stabilization Fund is for unanticipated special education needs. Right now, I believe there's a little over $300,000. Ellen probably knows the exact amount. It doesn't go away at the end of the year. It sits, and we can continue to add to it if we feel we need to, or we don't. And if we have a need or, you know, a shortage in our special education, I believe we go to selectmen and school committee to ask to utilize it.
Could often be used for a situation where we had unanticipated special education need in the district, or potentially if it was a settlement or something to that extent. That's
No, I
typically
think it's great that that's been set up, because those costs would just derail the whole budget. So.
Yes.
That's right. With one issue. Gina Stino from Advisory. Jean, you're on mute.
Sorry, it mutes you if you don't talk often enough. Hard to believe I'm not talking often enough.
No, I'm doing it. No.
Isn't there a cap on that fund, on the stabilization fund? I thought there was.
There is.
There is.
I believe
you're saying it's over 300,000, and I thought that at one point the cap was in the 200s.
No, I believe I believe it's a percentage. I want to say a third of our Sped tuitions.
Total. Okay.
Dawn Pyatt
It's a percentage, no.
might have the answer, and then I see Ellen with her hand
Ellen
up.
might
But
have the
Dawn,
answer. It's a
So-
percentage.
There's a maximum 2% of total net school spending.
Okay, that's what confused me. It's the two.
So the 2% of net school spending based on, I think these were the FY21 net school spending numbers from the DESE, would be 517,000. We currently have 400,000 in the fund.
Okay,
We
thank you.
we're just planning to appropriate another 75,000 at town meeting, so we're pretty close to the cap.
Okay.
great. Ellen, was that what you were going to say? Great. Okay. Any other questions? Just Fran Collins from advisory.
Yeah, is there anything being offered for the student who's not particularly going to go on to college where you need some what we used to call manual training or home economics or anything like that, where people learn how to do basic things that you need to do if you're going to live a human life? Sewing and how to use a screwdriver and how to hem a cuff.
Before you answer, Dr. Sullivan, Fran, we just had a presentation right before we opened the joint meeting with the Tom Hickey from the Votech School, which was wonderful. And certainly that's a great option for a lot of students, but I'll let Dr. Sullivan speak on behalf of the Cohasset School.
Oh, I heard Dr. Hickey's talk, but now we're talking about Cohasset and kids that aren't going to Votech. So.
Yes, and we do not have a what's entitled a comprehensive high school. There are a few of them in the state, and because we aren't a comprehensive high school, we do have partnership with our vocational technical school that Superintendent Hickey spoke of before I got here. However, we do have some offerings in woodworking. We have a STEM class in our middle school. We have art, of course, in our buildings, but we do not have the traditional home economic pathway that you speak of, Mr. Collins. And so, obviously, if someone is moving in that direction, the vocational technical school would be more appropriate. Doesn't mean we can't build that. And I can understand your point. We could do more and not be, have to be a comprehensive high school. Still be partnered in with the VOTEC. But right now we don't have a significant amount of offerings in that area.
I would like to see some basic offerings in that. And the reason why I teach at Mass Maritime Academy, and we receive students from all over the place, and they're not all from VOTEC. Matter of fact, most of them are not from VOTEC. And it's just astounding how little basic mechanical knowledge they have. They don't know a screwdriver from a 14-quart pail. And I say to them, this isn't right. That somebody's going to teach them something about it, and eventually it's us.
No, I hear you. And we do have some practical applications of, we have a credit for life fair that we do with our students. We have courses that teach financial literacy, but you are correct that we do not have a lot of offerings other than our woodworking offerings and some of our STEM offerings that really deal with the mechanical nature of of a need there. So very well noted.
Thank you.
I do have one question, and then if anybody else has a question before we close this joint meeting, raise your hand while I'm asking mine, which is just the social emotional focus that you presented on one of the first slides as a goal. One of the things that I recall a few years ago is the presentation of the need for extra, I think it's guidance counselors or adjustment counselors at the high school in particular and throughout the school district. So I don't see that as having grown in the last number of years. And I just wonder if that's still a priority or if it's being funded some other way.
Yeah, actually it has, Chairperson Kennedy, it has, because last year we were able to add a full adjustment counselor. And through some maneuverings within our own hirings, our own staffing, we were able to create a middle school halftime school psychologist and halftime adjustment counselor, and a high school halftime school psychologist, halftime adjustment counselor that work specifically with those grade levels. We were able to, through our because it was on our second tier. Through some retirement savings, we were able to add an additional 0.5 guidance counselor at our high school level. And then the year before that, we added a adjustment counselor that floats between the Osgood and the Deer Hill School. So we've actually, over the last few years, added significantly to our offerings because we were very much lacking in that. So that was a major focus of ours in the last couple of years.
Great, thank you. And I think Ellen Marr has her hand up from the school committee.
Yeah, thank you, Mrs. Kennedy. I just wanted to comment on how we put together our budget priorities because Mr. Evans asked a question and you just did as well. And what we found some years ago is that our budget priorities would come and go. We would test a program or pilot a program and then not do anything with it. And we felt that if you look at last year's presentation, social emotional learning, early numeracy, safety and security in the buildings were all our budget priorities last year. And we want to echo those priorities through all of our documentation, whether it's the superintendent's goals, the school committee goals, our budget priorities. So we're all focused on the same thing.
Thanks.
It doesn't mean necessarily that additional funding is allocated. It means that the funding that we have is going to continue to work on those. And these priorities will evolve and help shape, as Dr. Sullivan mentioned, our next 3-year strategic plan. And then our budget priorities from that strategic plan will flow for the period of that plan. So we have continuity and we don't forget the things that we started before. We would start something and stop something and move on to the next. And that doesn't make for a high level of education or achievement for our students.
Thank you so much. Very, very nicely stated. Jack Creighton has a question from the select board.
Yeah, this is indirectly related to the budget, but I get a lot of questions about the 1619 project and whether this is being taught in the schools and whether and this is the budget, and if the money that the taxpayers are paying is being paid to instruct in the 1619 project. And we could answer, Dr. Campbell may want to answer that more comprehensively later. I don't think we ought to take a lot of time with it, but I think that in this public forum, that the school committee and the school should know that people are wondering that, and maybe we should give them an answer. Thank you.
Yeah, the 16, I mean, it's the journalism project. Yeah, I mean, Dr. Scollins, I don't know if you know of anything around that. I mean, that's a.
I don't. I think, I mean, yeah, I wish I had an answer for you right now. I'm sorry that I don't.
This is not the time. Just with
Yeah.
everybody here, and it's a public
Sure.
meeting, and there's been a lot of people asking, and when people ask, it's better to give them an answer rather than let rumor take over.
Right.
So, and we
Well,
have lots of stuff to do tonight, so.
One
let's not-
thing though, our cultural competency is a huge part of everything we're doing. We're looking at all of our texts, Mr. Creighton, to make sure that they're balanced and that they're inclusive of all cultures, particularly, as it comes to situations around slavery and the way we're teaching. All of that is paramount to everything we're doing. And, as a town, we're really working on celebrating Juneteenth coming up. That's it's the first year that it's being recognized as a state holiday, and it will be a day off from school in 2022, so next year, by law. So we're really looking at all of our curricula to make sure that it's balanced, and it's a major enterprise of ours right now, and it's something that we added to our strategic plan. So one of the things that Ellen spoke of was the strategic plan really governing everything, and we every year examine it and make adjustments appropriately. And cultural competency has been an addition and really a deeper dive over the last couple of years.
Thank you. We do have, and I didn't announce this at the beginning, but if you would like to be recognized from the public to ask a question, there is somebody that posted in the Q&A. If you would like to ask your question, please, if you would raise your hand and then we'll promote you. If you want to ask a question of the advisory of the select board of the school committee at this time. So, okay. Okay. So, Carrie, did you have a question?
We have one question from Mike Dick. I'm trying to promote him right now.
Okay. Thank you. It's just easier, you know, I said it earlier in the meeting, it's just easier for us to not monitor the Q&A, which can get a little out of control, and ask people that want to be recognized to come into the meeting and ask their question.
Okay, I think Mike might be here now.
Carrie, you can just go ahead and read the question that I typed into the Q&A. That's fine. Thank you.
Sure. Okay. Mike Dick from 27 Parker Ave says, it appears that the district is adding teachers and staff for FY22. What is the forecast for adding teachers and support staff for the next years? What will the effect be on the post-retirement benefits to the town?
Well, I mean, thank you, Ms. Dick, for the question. If, you know, we're certainly aware of the strains that come from post-employment benefits. That's why we're really trying to be mindful of the data that drives our decisions to grow this district. We certainly are, you know, looking for ways that we can reallocate our current positions to try to fill these needs. But if the data does drive us to a point where, you know, we feel that we're falling short for our students, we're going to advocate for those positions. So I guess my answer is that we're mindful of both the needs of the district and our responsibility to be fiscally responsible regarding post-employment benefits. We're looking at all the priorities that I just mentioned earlier in the presentation, and our new strategic plan, which will certainly drive our decisions. I think you might have broken up. Anyway, that's what I would offer. But Sue or Leslie, feel free to answer if you feel there's something else you want to add. Thank you, Mr. Dick.
Okay.
They've lost their chair.
Yeah, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can't see you. I don't think.
I know. I'm sorry. I'm having wonky Wi-Fi.
We can hear you. If you want to just talk without us seeing you, that's fine. Or I can continue.
It'll be a little challenging. Carrie, if you could just, I think what we need to do is, unless there's any other question.
All right. Pat, are you done with that point? I'm going to try to pick up where Diane was, but I didn't know if you'd finished that thought.
I am. I want to be respectful to Mr. Dick's question. That's what I would offer. You know, I know it's not as specific as probably the question might have led me to believe he might be looking, but I think we just, at this point, we're looking at our priorities, looking at the data that's driving it, and trying to be mindful of our responsibility fiscally with post-employment benefits.
Thank you.
Well said. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. On that note, are there any other questions? I know this has gone a little over time, but everyone has had some important things to ask. So I'm trying to read the room here. Seems like we are satisfied.
Great questions. I really want to thank the advisory and the select persons for the just awesome questions. Thank you.
Okay. I think if there is no further questions on that, we should be able to move on to our agenda of recommending articles for the warrant.
Carrie?
Yeah.
Actually, I'm going to go move.
Well, you may
Oh, sorry.
The select board may do what it pleases, but the advisory committee is going to go someplace else and do our thing.
I suppose
So-
that's allowed.
Thank
Yes,
you.
we need to officially adjourn, so go ahead.
Yes, so can I have a motion from somebody on the advisory board that we adjourn and reconvene in our subsequent noticed meeting?
I'll move.
I second.
Fran Collins and Lee Jenkins seconds. Roll call vote, Gina Stino. Well,
Sorry, it muted me again. Aye.
Fran Collins,
Aye.
Jean Healy,
Aye.
Lee Jenkins,
Aye.
Aline Lieb.
Aye, do we have a Zoom for the next one?
We do, it's on our agenda, there's a link.
Okay, great.
Mary McGoldrick,
If you could send me that, that would be great, because I'm not sure I have it. Chris, thanks. Chris Senior, thanks.
Mary McGoldrick,
Aye.
Meg Wheeler,
Aye.
and Rob Hillman is an aye. So we're adjourned from the joint meeting and we'll reconvene in our own meeting in a few minutes.
Thank you, advisory.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks to the select board for
Thank
hosting.
you very
Nice to
much.
see the school committee.
Good luck in the next meeting. All right.
Oh,
school
we'll
committee.
manage. Thank you.
All right,
Thank you. Motion to adjourn from the school committee.
go ahead.
Motion made by Mrs. St. Ange, seconded by Mrs. Colery. All in favor, Mrs. Colery.
Aye.
Mr. Kearney. Aye. Mrs. Marr.
Aye.
Mrs. St. Ange.
Aye.
Aye. Craig McClellan. Motion unanimously carries. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you so much, select board.
Everyone,
Thank
Thank you very much,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Have a great night.
Thank you, everybody, if
Bye-bye.
you can even hear me.
All right, school committee's heading out. Diane, you are back.
Am I? I can't see anybody. I'm so sorry. I'm at town hall too, because I thought I'd get a Wi-Fi signal, but
Yep, we can, you're freezing a
You're
little,
back.
but we can hear you. Is she frozen again? Okay.
She dropped again.
All right, that's fine. Let's start to move on with our warrant articles. I know we have a lot of articles on here for the agenda, starting with planning board. And I do see Lauren Lind has joined us and Katie Dugan and Chris. Hi, everyone. All right, so starting with Chris, did you have a general presentation about all of these all together, or do we want to go one by one with the articles?
Let me set you up for this. So I believe, and Lauren can correct me if I'm wrong, you're going to hear two separate presentations. You're going to hear from Lauren Lind, our Director of Planning, on Articles 20, 21, 22, 23, and 28. Is that correct, Lauren? Did I miss one?
24 as well.
Yeah,
20
20
through 24 and 28.
28. And then Katie Dugan will present from the Zoning Advisory Board, the Zoning Working Group, 25, 26, and 27.
Okay, wonderful.
And then I don't know if Katie has said something she wants to preface, Carrie.
I just wanted to ask that you promote Woody Chidick and Tom Callahan. They're the two members that are going to be joining me for zoning bylaw working group tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Yep, we are promoting them right now. Okay. Is it working? Let's see. There we are. There's Tom. All right, Woody, you all should be here. Welcome, everyone. Welcome, welcome. This is fun. Don't you all love town meeting season? No, Woody says no. All right. So planning board articles. Let's get started with, I believe Article 20 is the first one. Is that correct, Lauren? With
Yes.
floodplain watershed protection.
Yes, so I'll get started. Thank you very much for having me. For those who don't know, my name is Lauren Lind. I'm the planning director for the town. I'm going to share my screen and go through a quick high-level overview presentation for Articles 20 through 24 and 28 for annual town meeting. This is for those of you who are at the advisory committee meeting on April 8th. This is going to be a very similar presentation. So I'll get started with Article 20, Floodplain and Watershed Protection District Amendment. This is an update for it's actually mandated by the Federal Emergency Management Agency. This is sort of one of those, we must complete this update before actually July 6th, 2021, or it results in an automatic removal from the National Flood Insurance Program for the entire community, which would be a very large liability for the town. So this is very important that we get this done. You will, you may recognize that this article actually was one of the zoning article that made it through the annual town meeting process last year when we had scaled back due to the pandemic. But at the last sort of moment, FEMA decided to rescind that round of the update because there were issues throughout the Commonwealth, and also there's 2 towns in Rhode Island that fall into this watershed that were having problems adopting because of annual town meeting issues. So this update, it's very similar to last year in that it updates the map references and panel numbers and the dates of the effective maps and flood insurance study. But what's really substantially different in this year's version is that they also, and they being FEMA, decided to update their model floodplain bylaw. So there is significantly more content at the end. I would just simply state that it's not anything controversial. It's really sort of procedural and policy designations. So that's why you'll see more of a substantial change this year in this version of the article as opposed to last year. It has been reviewed by town council, and I've been working with representatives from FEMA and the State Department of Conservation and Recreation to make sure that it is up to speed on what it needs to be done for this year. Please stop me at any point if you have questions, or we can take them at the end. I'll defer to you, but I'll just keep moving along until
Thanks, Lauren.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll let you keep going unless anyone has any pressing questions, but we can save them till the end to ask you about all of these as a complete product here.
Great, thank you. So the next Article 21 is an amendment to the ground-mounted solar photovoltaic installations overlay district. This bylaw originally was established to allow a solar array development about the town's capped landfill. And this amendment would add a second location to the applicable parcels that would allow for the potential for an additional solar array to be developed atop a capped landfill off of Crocker Lane in the 3A corridor. Article 22 is a zoning map update relative to the parcel that is known as the Whitney Spur Rail Trail. It's currently zoned light industrial with a small portion that falls into technology business. And what we are proposing through this article is to reclassify the parcel to be zoned as open space, which would be consistent with its current use. Article 23 is a amendment to the fast food restaurant definition. What this would do is add one single word, a principle, to the definition of fast food restaurants to allow for clarification of interpretation through the Zoning Board of Appeals process that requests to have fast food components as an accessory to a primary use. I want to be clear here that it doesn't expand applicable areas where this would be allowed as a current use in our zoning bylaws. An example that we commonly use is to sort of what brought this request about is the snack shack at Sandy Beach. And the rationale is that the snack shack is an accessory use to the principal use that is recreational of the beach. And therefore the snack shack does not constitute a fast food restaurant. And this was one of the amendments that had actually been sort of proposed for annual town meeting last year as well. It was requested through the Zoning Board of Appeals, through the Planning Board, and the Zoning Board of Appeals is the special permit granting authority for fast food restaurant uses. Article 24 is an amendment to special permits in the Village Business District. The table of use regulations in the zoning bylaw currently lists the Planning Board as the special permit granting authority for all uses in the Village Business District, with the exception of guest houses and veterinarian clinics, which currently go to the Zoning Board of Appeals. It's believed that in a previous revision of the table of use regulations that it may have been a Scrivener's error, and that it was intended that the Planning Board would be the special permit granting authority for all of the uses in the district. So this amendment would just establish that and as the Planning Board and give all special permitting authority in this district to the Planning Board. Articles 25, 26, and 27, you're going to hear more about in a moment from the Zoning Bylaw Working Group. This is a group that is formed from the Master Plan Implementation Committee, and they have been doing an extensive amount of work. I'm not going to get into all the detail. I will let them fully verse you on that, but these are the articles relative to use variances amendment, land alteration, and the sunset of the senior multifamily residential overlay district. And then finally, Article 28 is the Board of Public Health zoning bylaw amendment. And what this would do is change every instance of the reference to Board of Health to be Board of Public Health to be consistent with the board's official name change. That's all I have for you. This is my contact information for anyone in the audience who'd like to contact me at any point, really. But if you have any questions on the zoning articles as we go into annual town meeting, there you have it. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and we can pause for questions.
Wonderful. Thank you, Lauren. Hi, Diane. I see you're back.
I'm back on my phone. I'm trying to get rebooted. So I think Paul Schubert has a question, and then I do have a question.
So a quick thing on the solar array overlay district, is that when you go up Crocker Lane, is it all the way to the end beyond the sports complex on the hill?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Corey has a question.
Yeah, for 24 special permits in the Village Business District. So, as it stands right now, you'd have to go in front of ZBA if you wanted to do one of those two use cases, as well as Planning Board. This would, I guess, effectively just take out ZBA from that process. Is that a good resummary of what's going on?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
My quick question, Lauren, is the Board of Public Health. Just remind me, did we address this last year and it ended up not going to town meeting, or did it go to town meeting?
That's correct. I believe it got withdrawn because it needs to be changed for both the general and the zoning bylaws.
Got it. That's what it was. Okay, thank you. Okay, no other questions from the select board. I will turn it over to Katie for the more meaty zoning articles.
Excellent. Do I have Billy's share? Excellent. I will share ours. Get this in full screen. All right. So just a quick introduction of the zoning bylaw working group. As Lauren alluded to, we are a working group that was convened by the Master Plan Implementation Committee in August of last year. We started our work in September. We are charged with helping implement the 20 or so zoning related strategies that are in the master plan that cover a wide range of topics, from land use to housing to open space. One of the first things that we did was set up our goals, and what we're here tonight to talk to you about are three of those: the use variance, senior multifamily residential overlay district, and land alteration. But just to give the community a little bit of perspective, we are working on some meatier projects, which will be back to the community and the select board and the planning board to talk about relative to harbor zoning, housing options, and residential zoning. And then longer term, we've laid out a topic area around historical districts, and then also just a broader recodification of our zoning bylaws. Since the last time our zoning bylaws were significantly overhauled was 1989. We're going on 35 years, so it's time to sort of look at reorganizing and recodifying in general. So with that, as a quick backdrop, there are 7 members of our group from ZBA, from Open Space and Rec, from Master Plan Implementation, from the Select Board, and 2 from the Planning Board. So it's a working group that comprises a number of the land use permitting boards and Master Plan, and I think really has started some good work. So with that, skipping to the first one that we want to talk to you about, which is Article 25, the Use Variance Amendment. All 3 of our articles have gone before the Planning Board, the ZBA, and the Advisory Committee, and were voted unanimously to recommend them for annual town meeting. And now it's here to you tonight to make your vote. So the use variance amendment, the specific is we're recommending that we delete a use variance prohibition in 12.5 and replace it with the following language in 4.2, which is the table of uses. The specific language that we're looking on to insert reads, a special permit may authorize a use not otherwise addressed in the bylaws. A variance may authorize a use specifically prohibited in the bylaws. Just to give you a little bit of context and background here, in 2001, a motion on the town floor, which was not vetted by any of the land use permitting boards, created an outright prohibition of use variances. This small amendment has had many unintended consequences over the last 20 years. And as a result, the zoning bylaw working group is recommending to return to language that's more typical in Massachusetts towns and what our zoning bylaws were for over 40 years up until 2001. An example of sort of the unintended consequences, I think we all may remember there was a veterinary practice that was looking to relocate from the downtown village area to 3A. Unfortunately, that was not a use that was allowed in the district they were moving to on 3A. And as a result, the business was delayed moving by over 2 years. It cost the town and the business and required approval all the way up to the state attorney general. So what we're proposing here would allow the ZBA, the Zoning Board of Appeals, in its
in its duties to look at specific uses that are not stated and make a determination through a special permit process whether they should be allowed or not in a district. In addition to the practical pieces associated with the veterinary's practice relocation, there are a number of commonly accepted uses such as inns, assisted living facilities, and group homes that are not currently listed as accepted uses, and as a result would be denied permits because they are unmentioned and undefined in our zoning bylaws. And the reality is that our zoning bylaws and our table of uses attempt to state those which we would like to prohibit, specifically, a gas station in a residential district. But it doesn't necessarily envision every single use that could possibly happen over now or in the next 50 years. And obviously what we're looking for here is not to do anything more than what is typical in other Massachusetts towns. And so for uses not stated in the zoning bylaws, a special permit process would apply after a public hearing, and the ZBA would require findings relative to neighborhood compatibility, public safety, and health and open space, and make a determination whether that unstated use was compatible with the district that was being proposed to be placed in. As for uses that are stated in our zoning bylaws, there's a stringent variance test, and this would be for exceptions where a use is specifically prohibited in a district. And as a result, there'd be public hearings and again, a ZBA vetting of that use as to whether it would be permitted or not as a variance. We actually believe as a zoning bylaw working group that this will allow the ZBA to use its judgment in hearings as it relates to uses and is a valuable tool for this land use permitting board to have in their tool chest. So with that, if your preference is, I can keep on going through all of these and hold questions to the end. Diane, Carrie?
Yeah, I would like to see after each of these because they are important, whether anybody has any questions or needs any clarification. So Corey?
Just quickly, Katie, I think your papers are hitting the mic and it's on your computer, so it just blasted my ears. But 25 makes a lot of sense. I think it's, as you said earlier, it's impossible for us to envision kind of what we need in the future, and having a sentence that says we can't do anything outside of these specific things seems a little bit backwards. So this and I think what you said about the ways that the mechanisms we have to protect our town are robust as it is. So this to me just seems like a sensible, a very logical way of kind of bringing stuff up to speed. So thanks for that.
Yep. Great, thank you. Jack?
Yeah, I was on this working committee. So just a point of order, Diane, do we want to vote on these after we go through them? Because if so, I would make this motion, but I don't want to preclude other members of the board from speaking.
I would wait till we have just the full presentation, and then we'll go through all of these zoning articles one by one.
Okay, one by one. So we'll go discuss everything, and at the end we'll go bang, bang, bang.
I would like to do it, yeah.
Just
only
wanted to
because
check
all
that
of
out.
Lauren's.
No, I'm fine.
Thank you. All right, any other questions on this? Great work. Katie, want to move along? Yep.
Excellent. Okay. So the next article is Article 26, which is the land alteration amendment. So the mechanics of this are we are asking the town to remove and replace the text in Article 11, which is currently regulations governing earth removal, and replace it with new text related to land alteration. This is a article that has seen previous versions in 2017 and 2020, but after research and additional benchmarking, the zoning bylaw working group has deliberately decided to take a phased approach in the land alteration bylaw that's being proposed for annual town meeting 2021. Phase 1, which is going before annual town meeting this spring, adds limits regarding clearing activities to the existing bylaw governing earth removal activities. In phase 2, the working group will study ledge protection, and we will come back with recommendations in the near future which balance the fundamental rights of landowners to enjoy and develop their property within reasonable limits with those of their neighborhood. We do not believe that ledge protection is ready for discussion at annual town meeting this year, but it is something that the community has inputted in and our working group is committed to studying. As it relates to the bylaw that's before you tonight, the working group was able to analyze multiple examples of detrimental clearing activities in Cohasset, and the data showed a clear pattern of 1, clear cutting on undeveloped lots, and 2, clear cutting on developed residential lots when they were subdivided into multiple lots for redevelopment. And the data that we looked at, actually 70% of the cases that we saw were clear cutting on undeveloped lots, and 30% fell in the second category of clear cutting on developed residential lots when they were being subdivided into multiple parcels. The proposed bylaw puts in place a special permit process through the planning board if an applicant looks to exceed certain preset limits related to clearing activities. And to be clear, clearing activities in the bylaw are defined as the complete removal of trees 4 inches or greater in diameter. We chose that specific metric so that it was in concert with what already the town has adopted in our scenic roads bylaw in terms of the type of trees that we're looking to protect. In terms of as I said, the type of land that the special clearing permit would apply to, or the limits apply to, there's 3 categories. 1 is open space, where the clearing of lots is prohibited unless it is necessary for a permitted or a grandfathered use. In terms of undeveloped lots, which were 70% of the cases that we were able to analyze, a special permit would be needed if you were looking to exceed 70% clearing of a lot area in a residential district and 85% of a lot in a commercial district. One of the reasons that we chose 70% was not only based on the benchmarking research we did of other Massachusetts communities who have adopted land alteration bylaws, it's also consistent with what is already in our existing zoning bylaws in Article 14 for the Water Resource District, which represents about 2/3 of Cohasset's landmass. There's already a prohibition on clearing beyond 70% limits. And so again, when we were developing this, we were trying to create harmony between our existing bylaws and what we're proposing tonight. So the 70% limit is something that's already in our zoning bylaws, but we're expanding it, as we suggested, to 3 categories: open space, undeveloped lots, and developed residential lots that are being subdivided or reconfigured. The 3rd category is undeveloped and residential lots. And for those lots that are being reconfigured, again, there's a 70% limit in terms of the lot area being cleared for those residential districts. The last but not least point, in 11.3, just so that everyone is clear, the language that you see in 11.3 is almost exactly the earth removal activities that are existing in our bylaws today. So the language is consistent. You're not adopting new language in 11.3, but just maintaining what we already have in our governing of earth removal activities. And we're adding to it, as we just discussed, with the clearing activities in the proposed 11.2. The only other thing that I would say that is important that we worked into this land alteration bylaw was the fact that a lot of what we've seen in town is actually the clear cutting of lots before any building permits were issued. So in 11.4, there's actually an express prohibition of clearing activities before the issuance of permits, whether it's a building permit, it's a special permit as considered under 11.2 for clearing activities, or it's a stormwater permit. So the activity of a developer doing land alteration prior to having any of the approvals they might need from our land use board will be halted, which I think is an important step in terms of regaining some control of how land alteration takes place as we further develop Cohasset. So with that, I'll pause and see if there's any questions.
Yep, we have a question from Paul and then Corey, and then I have a follow-up.
Okay.
So a question for the developed residential lots, which are subdivided or reconfigured, that portion says not to exceed 70% of the lot area. What if the lot area is already 75% cleared? Then can you go from 75 to 80%? So is it the 70% of the existing, or is it 70% of the total?
It's 70% of the total.
So if you had a house subdivision or a property that had already 75% cleared, you'd need a special permit to remove trees?
Correct.
Yeah, yes, but I guess the typical situation is not that the lot is 70% or 75% cleared. You've got a lot that, let's say, is a 4-acre lot and is being subdivided into 2 2-acre parcels. Usually one of those parcels has the existing structure on it, and the second is essentially, for all intents and purposes, raw land, and that's what we're looking to protect in the subdivision. But again, the situations that we saw were larger parcels. Just so everybody has a perspective in terms of what this means, there are about 62 parcels in town that are greater than 4 acres that could be subdivided. That in total, those 62 parcels represent about 400 acres. So this is a meaningful amount of our land mass that still could potentially be redeveloped if the homeowner had the frontage and had the other ability to subdivide. That's what we're looking to protect.
Okay, thanks.
Great. Thank you. Corey?
I guess my question is kind of in the same vein, and I'm not trying to be glib about it, but the question is, what does 70% really mean? And I mean, I guess on the surface it sounds simple, but in the myriad of different complicated scenarios, is there a definition that we have in the bylaws for how that 70% is calculated that could bring more clarity to it? Because I am, can you clarify that?
We thought a lot about this, and one of the things that we were very cognizant of was choosing a methodology that the buildings and inspection department, in particular our building inspector, felt could be measured and we could talk to applicants about. So we actually chose a concept that's already in place and administered in our town under the stormwater bylaw regulations, where you measure the percent of disturbed earth versus the total lot size. And when you think about it, if you've got a stand of trees, the way this practically plays out is that the applicant's engineer is going to basically draw a circle around that stand of trees, and anything in the middle of that is considered disturbed earth, and you're looking at that as a percent of the total lot size. So again, we were very cognizant of choosing a measurement tool that was the building and inspection department was comfortable with, and in fact is one that we're already using in town in stormwater management bylaw with the Concom.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Any other questions? Just 2 quick things. One is I really am happy about 11.4A, which is the prohibition until building permits are issued. I think that's key. And then on 11.3, the land alteration, is that something that will be readdressed? Is that part of the next phase in terms of the earth removal?
Yes, I mean, it'll either be modifications to 11.3 or a new section, whatever number we choose to make it, a totally new section. Again, we felt strongly that anything that we could propose to address the community concerns that have been raised relative to ledge removal would be rushed, and we simply needed more study. Rushing was going to result in an incomplete bylaw that doesn't serve the community in the end, and also creates issues for the land use permitting boards that are attempting to enforce the bylaw. So we are listening. We've got examples now, and when we're beginning our work on that.
Great, thank you. Okay. Any other questions? If not, Katie, you want to move on to the
Yeah. So this is our simplest one, and this really falls under the category of cleanup and recodification. So what we're recommending here is actually to delete Article 16 completely, which is the Senior Multifamily Residential Overlay District, and to make further amendments to delete references to this overlay district in the bylaws. The Senior Multifamily Residential Overlay District was adopted in 2002. And in the 19 years since its approval, we've had 0 applications utilizing Article 16. Furthermore, the town actually voted to sunset the Senior Multifamily Residential Overlay District at annual town meeting in 2006. But the sunset provision that was adopted by the town created a legal inconsistency because the language in the sunset specifically referenced the completion of the Cook Estates, which at the time was being contemplated to be being done under the senior multifamily, but ultimately was completed under a completely different zoning article. The working group itself absolutely recognizes the importance of the diversity of housing types, such as senior, multifamily, and affordable housing. But we are recommending the sunsetting of the senior multifamily residential overlay district because it has been an ineffectual overlay and hasn't resulted in the types of housing, and the town had already voted to previously sunset this. So the working group is studying various amendments that we will bring forward under our housing option goal to better support senior housing, multifamily, and affordable housing, and we'll make those recommendations in the near future. So I'll end there and see if there's any questions.
Great. Is there an a shortcut to the senior multifamily overlay district? Like residential overlay, what is it called other than that?
It's just SM Rod.
Right. Like, I'm like, there's gotta be, right.
I'm sorry, like
I almost said that, and then when I teed up the conversation, and then I thought, there's gotta be something I'm missing here. Okay, any questions on the specifics of that article? Okay, great. So, and Chris, correct me if I'm wrong. So Articles 20 through 27, which are enumerated on our agenda and we have just reviewed, have all been recommended unanimously by the planning board and the advisory board. And Chris,
Yes.
if I'm correct, we don't have a vote from advisory on the public health.
No, you do. They voted on everything.
They did vote on everything. Okay, so I might be looking at an old.
Well,
So,
Trish and I are going through this before, so if there's a mistake, it's on me.
Okay,
But they did vote on all of this.
okay, so basically we have affirmative unanimous votes from all the relevant boards on all the articles 20 through 28. And unless somebody wants to suggest another means, I would say if we could have a motion to make a recommendation to town meeting for approval of these articles, that would be great.
I make a motion, we recommend affirmatively to town meeting floor, articles number 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, and 28 as listed on the agenda.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, any last minute questions? Okay, great work, everyone. Thank you so much. I'll call for a roll call vote.
Jack Creighton, aye.
Corey Evans, aye.
Diane Kennedy, aye.
Paul Stewart, aye.
Carrie Thompson, aye.
Great, congratulations.
Thank
A lot of really hard work and it shows. It was very clear and thank you.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Okay, next up is CPC.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thanks, Lauren.
Thank you.
My interweb is still working, so we'll keep
Right
moving.
now.
Yeah, for right now. So the next article is Article 14, Community Preservation.
Diane, you saw Russ is here if we need him to talk.
I did see Russ, and maybe we should promote him unless we have any specific questions. So I think maybe if it's okay with the and Chris, we have all the votes on advisory for this as well. Is that correct?
Yes. There's one that should be on here, Trish and I were talking about earlier. And we're getting into the like quickie, these the warrants are getting updated almost on the fly.
Yeah.
There's a $200,000 allocation that's going to, or award that's being recommended to the Housing Authority for refurbishment of the facility of the buildings to maintain them. It's effectively a repurposing of money that they had already awarded that never was needed, fortunately, for the Trinus House, which is now complete. Or actually, it's not the Trinus House; it's now it's the Kate House that was just dedicated. The that should be on here. So if there should be another 200,000. Russ can correct me if I'm wrong. There's another 200,000 on here.
And that's literally just a Scrivener's error on the
Yes.
preparation of this
Yes,
particular
I
warrant
guess
article.
because we've been literally going like, it's like every day it's a new update on stuff.
Okay.
So, but it's there. I watched them vote on it, so I know what happened. So.
Okay. So
And Tom voted on it, so he can testify. So
there you go. Not testimony. No, I'm not swearing anybody in tonight. So just to describe what we're looking at in the warrant is there's 4 accounts that we have to vote, town meeting has to vote money into, which are listed at the top. And that's pretty much something we can probably just take a motion for. And then all the other the specific projects that have been recommended by CPC, they've been reviewed by advisory, and we discussed all of them last week. So unless there's a question, I'll ask for a motion to approve the 4 revenue accounts allocations.
I move we approve the 4 CPC revenue account allocations seen on the screen.
And Carrie, do you mind just reading them just for
Sure.
people that might not see it? Thanks.
For CPC revenue, open space recreation sub-account, 68,100. The historical sub-account, 68,100. Affordable housing sub-account, 68,100. And the administrative sub-account at 34,050.
Great, thank you. Is there a second?
I do see that Russ Benetti's hand popped up. I don't know if he wanted to make a comment before we voted on this.
I'll get him after I get the second. Yep, thanks.
Okay,
Second.
I second.
Okay, all right. Russ, did you want to make a comment on this? The allocations?
How's that? Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. They had just added the Cohasset Housing Authority. Everything else in there is the way it should be.
Okay.
Yeah, the 4 categories, we have no choice on those. That's statutory.
Okay.
The sub account for the administrative, I believe we spent about $3,300 last year. So the rest of that will get turned back in. We're allowed to take up to, I think it's 5%. There's no way we're going to spend 34,000 on it, so there'll be money coming back.
But just in case, great. So what I'm going to do is take this these revenue accounts to a vote now that we have a motion and a second, and then we can discuss what follows after that. So we have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Jack Creighton, aye.
Corey Evans.
Diane Kennedy, aye.
Paul Schubert, aye.
Carrie Thompson, aye.
Okay, so those revenue accounts are all set, and now they're the individual projects. So we reviewed these last week with advisory. The recommendations are all there. Does anybody have any questions on the specific projects? Okay, just one little typo I see is Milliken Field is spelled with 2 L's, I believe. So basically, this is $3,000 for Paul Pratt Memorial Library, $375,000 for the Cohasset High School track, $500,000 allocated to Affordable Housing Trust, $75,000 for the town clock, which we learned a lot about last week, $40,000 for the town docks, $385,000 for Parker Avenue ramp, $100,000 for ADA improvements to the CYBSA ball fields on North Main Street, $19,000 for the Deer Hill softball field restoration, $450,000 land acquisition at 487 King Street through Cohasset Conservation Trust, $58,000 Beechwood basketball court, $13,200 Sawyer Street basketball court, $15,000 for Milliken Field, $50,000 for Second Congregational Preservation facade, and $200,000 for Cohasset Housing Authority. Which
Diane?
Yeah.
That is not new money, the 200,000. That is a transfer of funds. We gave the Housing Authority $200,000 towards the Tredis house, which is now finished, and they didn't need the 200. So we transferred it back so they can use it for, I believe, storm doors and a few other things around the Housing Authority. So that's not new money. It's
Okay.
just a transfer.
For the purposes of the warrant, Chris, is it fine in this format? And then maybe it'll be separately, I see a Tom in a second, it'll be separately listed maybe as a motion that with different language?
Yeah, the actual motion, it'll say where the source is. It's being repurposed, so the motion will note that it's being repurposed. But it's a new project in the sense the money's being spent on something different. But Russ is correct. It's money that was unspent. It's basically being reclaimed and then sent back out.
Okay. Tom, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I just like the church project should probably be listed as historic preservation, not as open space and recreation. Just a typo on that chart. But.
Okay. And I just think it's important to acknowledge that on the second congregational preservation of its facade, we have received communications on that. You know, just making sure we were aware, and I'm sure town meeting will be made aware of funding for religious institutions and where that fine line might be. And I know that was discussed very significantly with the CPC membership, and I believe that was not a unanimous vote.
No, it was 5-3.
5-3 from CPC.
We had one person who was absent.
Okay, and every other recommendation, Russ, was unanimous?
As far as I recall,
Yes, they were.
Tom, I believe, recused himself from was it the King Street property, Tom? There was one where you didn't vote. It may have actually.
Actually, it was you, Russ, who recused yourself from the Parker Avenue votes.
Right, I recused on Parker.
Yeah,
Ave,
no,
but
I
there
don't.
was
I don't
another
think I did.
recusal, I thought.
No,
Okay.
I don't think I did. But they were all unanimous except for the church.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, Corey has a question. And if there's any member of the public that would like to be promoted to make to say anything, please raise your hand. Corey, go ahead.
I'm just wondering if the chair would entertain just a little bit of back and forth on the funding for second congregational.
Conversation amongst us? Absolutely.
Yeah, okay. Well, I just, our colleague, Mr. Schubert, I watched the replay of the meeting. And, you know, I think the point being that what town council advised us is that this application must be, you know, really looked at and scrutinized very carefully. And Mr. Schubert brought up the point that, you know, if we were to give, and my apologies if I'm not paraphrasing you correct, Paul, if so, just please correct me, that if we were to give money to the church, we need to be sure that the money that we're giving them isn't displacing money that will then go towards religious services. And I did a lot of thinking about that point. And I think logically, I may disagree with Paul a little bit here, and I'd love to hear all your feedback on this, is that applying that standard as you phrased it is somewhat not falsifiable, in that unless the church literally had $0 left to turn on a light or to mow the grass or do anything, then it would mean that they would fail that test every time.
Right.
So I'm not quite sure if we can apply that test then. And for me, I landed on the idea of if we can confirm that this money is just going to be used for the purposes that it's stated for, and I think that's more what the law or what the opinion we gave stated, then it's something that we can consider. It doesn't, you know, we can consider, you know, for approval. Feedback on that idea?
Tom, I'm going to have you wait till after the board's had a
Sure,
discussion.
no,
then
absolutely.
I'll
That's
invite
fine. Thank
in.
you.
Yeah.
No, thank you.
Paul?
Yeah, so there, the legal aspects, there's three qualifications that you have to reach the hurdle and get over the bar. One is it an historic building under historic recommendations? It is. Is it abutting or on an historic landmark or site, or in view of a national historic location? And so it is on a historic location. The third is that you have to be confident that the monies that will go will not be commingled or used for other purposes. And that was my my concern, is that the money will go towards the church, and well, does the church or any church have monies outside of the monies they asked for that could easily be used for fixing it? And would you be able to clearly earmark all of that money and be sure and be certain that that money is only used and not displacing other monies that would go for interior work of a church, an altar, religious windows, any of the things which would be considered religious use. So that was the third hurdle I could not reach, couldn't get over that.
Corey?
Do you think that's an impossibly high bar, though? I mean, just I don't exactly know how an institution that, you know, would ever clear that bar as you phrased it. You know, so that would mean that every church would be immediately disqualified, because I don't know of a way to make that hurdle clear. You know, have you thought about that?
And, you know, I'll weigh in. Paul, go ahead. And then Jack, and
Yes,
then we'll get to
think
CPC members.
I believe it is a high bar, yes, and that I just think that it should be a high bar, because you should, in my view, from the separation of church and state, where yes, it's a historic location, but you should be clear about when you're funding religious organizations, and that I think you have to have a high standard and a high bar. So yes, it is a high bar, but I think in this case, if the church has monies that are available and it's usable, then they should not be asking for it and should be taking it from their coffers. It does benefit the town, so yes, it does, but I still think it's a bar that I can't reach over.
Jack?
Well, clearly, and I am disclosing that I am a member of Second Congregational. But clearly, when the court decided to approve this in the opinion, which had not been decided 5 years ago when this was so controversial, so we should all be clear about that. Clearly, the court was obviously aware of that fungibility of funds. And if they did not intend it to allow funds to be used, they would not have ruled as they did. They clearly understood that. Now, the question is whether the church is not funding this and they're just grabbing money. Well, the cost alone of this work that they're going to do is twice the $50,000. And in addition to that, you should be aware that there's a substantial amount of additional funding that is going to be required. And this church is not a wealthy church. They have a parsonage, which has been thrown out. And the purpose of the parsonage is so they can afford a minister, because they can't afford to pay a minister who can live in Cohasset. So they have a house the church has had it forever. So that's not like an asset that's like on your balance sheet. That's an economic asset. It's part of paying the minister. So there's tremendous amount of money that needs on that old wooden church. The church is not awash in hundreds of millions of dollars of things. The church, right, is paying their bills, but not much more. So this is not a thing where the town is giving money to a wealthy church so they can use it elsewhere. This church is not well funded. This church is a historic church. It has a lot of long-term Cohasset residents. And the church is paying more than half of the cost, of this. And what is being fixed is only the part of the church that's really looking right out over the common. And I am a believer in separation of church and state, by the way. And I would, and I think Paul has a good point, that if money was being taken from CPC to make it money available for religious indoctrinations or preaching of whatever, that would be a different thing. But this is a thing that is funded mostly by the church. It only faces out onto the common, and the church has got much other liabilities of that building. So I'm very comfortable with this.
Paul, do you want to respond to that? Then I'm going to say something
I
and
do,
then
yeah.
I'll take
And also-
Tom and Russ.
Yep, and also in that ruling, the term substantive or substantial monies used, and I in my view, $50,000 is a substantial amount of money. So that was the other point, which I think, regardless of how much the church has, in my view, $50,000 from the town is a substantial amount. That's all.
I am very conflicted in a lot of ways on this, but to Corey's point, it really is an impossible, you could make the case that any penny that is given to a religious organization is replacing money, that they don't have, that they can spend on their religious work. It really is a very high bar, recognizing that. And also as somebody that is a fundraiser, I spent probably 120 hours and hired a consultant to help me to apply for $20,000 for a federal grant. And it was incredibly complicated, and I had to produce all kinds of 990s and balance sheets and whatnot from our organization. And I just think in the future, and this is something for us to talk about going forward, but we really should require a lot more due diligence in terms of finances, so we can understand what organizations that are applying for taxpayers' money, what kind of assets they have, because a lot of arts organizations, churches, sports organizations, et cetera, are sitting on a lot of cash. And so I do think it's important for us to understand what their assets are vis-a-vis what they're asking from the taxpayers in town. So with that, I'm going to, Carrie, unless you want to weigh in right now, I'll ask Tom and then Russ to speak, and then we'll go to a vote on these things.
I appreciate this discussion, and I think everyone's being really thoughtful about it. That being said, I am in favor of this article and this motion, and I support it in its current form.
Great, thanks. Tom?
Yeah, I just want to point out that, you've heard that there's been a case. So there was an SJC case from Acton and Corey that set up this 3-part test. So we can't ignore that there's a third part to that test. In that case, the court only rejected outright the proposed expenditure for stained glass windows, which had obvious religious symbolism. It then just created the 3-part test for the other renovations and basically sent it back to that town CPC and to all the other town CPCs about how you interpret that 3-part test. I will say this, I was one of the 3 voting against this. I'm pretty much an absolutist on separation of church and state. I think, however, Paul Durensis gave you as good an opinion that can ever be given on how to fund something like this. There's the deciding factor, I think, here for the 5 votes is that there was no religious icons and symbolism involved in this. It's a pure, straight historical renovation in a historical district.
Mm-hmm.
I personally, and as a lawyer, don't think the 3rd test can ever be overcome,
right,
because obviously if a church is not spending money on renovations, it's using that money for something else. Right. And I don't think you can ever, so I disagree with Paul Durensis' ultimate conclusion, but he gave you as good a legal opinion for that side of the question that you are going to find. So I voted against this, but my concern for the future is, one of the members of our committee who's a member of a different church on the common, and I don't know if it's a historic building or not, but said, well, we'll be on the door next. Right. Or what if it's one of the churches who are not on the common? Right. And then we're going to get into some really dicey questions. Before I got on the CPC this time around, I guess money was given to for the church in the middle of the common for window renovation. This is for historical renovation. Okay, there's very legitimate historical renovation arguments that can be made for both cases, but it's a very fine line, and I don't think it can be crossed, and that's why I voted against this. But we're here, and I think we can, in light of what Second Congregational intends to do with this money, I think we can all, even those who oppose it, can at least rest somewhat easily that we haven't gone over a line that we shouldn't have crossed.
Right.
But that court decision left this three-part test without any strong guidelines, other than obvious religious icons and symbols you can't fund fixing. But it's left it to all these towns, and it was pointed out that 59 towns since that decision have given money to churches, including us before. It's a potential slippery slope, but as one who opposed it, I'm not losing sleep over it either.
And Russ, I'll recognize you, and then I'll sum up, and maybe we can hold this out of, if we're going to vote everything else together.
You're right. It is hard to separate this money as whether it will free other monies for them or not. But at some point, you have to take people at their word. And I think, considering all the benefits that Second Congregation has contributed to this town, the Appalachian Project, the first food pantry in town, the Tai Chi classes in the morning, tons of other things, AA. At this point, I think you have to make your decision on, are they a good citizen and are they representing themselves honestly? And I chose to take that path. Again, this had no religious icons in it, which was the same with First Parish, which when it came before us, my initial reaction was this does violate church and state. The First Amendment says that the government will not establish nor deny a religion. It doesn't say anything about fixing the windows. I think in the sense of what they contribute to the town, that it's worth us doing this.
Thanks, Russ. And for the board, it was a 5-3 vote from CPC, so it's on the warrant unless we wanted to throw it off, which we wouldn't. I don't think we would ever do that. So ultimately, our vote on this is whether to recommend it or not to town meeting, and it's town meeting's decision on this. And I think all of these concerns are valid. I think we all have some conflict on these particular decisions because, as Tom pointed out, there was a legal decision that really didn't provide any clarity. Like, everybody wants it to say you can do this and you can do that and you can't do that, but that is not how the law typically runs, which is why people can be employed as lawyers. Exactly. It keeps Tom busy and my husband and many other people. So so unless anybody has any other comments on that, I think what I'd like to propose, if there's any other recommendation for CPC funding that you are uncomfortable with voting as a totality, speak now or forever hold your peace. Otherwise, I would recommend that we take the Second Congregational $50,000 one and vote that separately from the others.
I would like to make, I can make a motion if we'd like.
Okay.
I'd like to make a motion that the select board approve or recommend at town meeting the following CPC projects: Paul Pratt Memorial Library for $3,000, Cohasset High School Track for $375,000, Affordable Housing Trust for $500,000, Town Clock for $75,000, Cohasset Harbor Town Docks for $40,000, Cohasset Harbor Parker Avenue Ramp for $385,000, CYBSA ADA improvements for $100,000, Deer Hero Softball Field restoration for $19,000, land acquisition at 487 King Street for $450,000, Beechwood Basketball Court for $58,000, Sawyer Street Basketball Court for $13,200, and Milliken Field improvements for $15,000 at town meeting. If I hadn't said that already.
And the Housing Authority?
I have a
I'm
question.
Sorry, as well as $200,000 for the Cohasset Housing Authority.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? And Russ, I see that you have a question, but let me ask the select board first. Any other questions on those? Okay, Russ?
Yeah, the land acquisition is really misnamed. We're not buying land. We're buying a conservation restriction. The title will be held by the Cohasset Conservation Trust, like in any other case that we've had. And what we're purchasing is a permanent conservation restriction on the property.
Okay, thanks for clarifying that. Chris, can we make sure that that's clarified in the warrant? That the conservation easement on 487 King Street?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, great. So we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Okay, I'll ask for a roll call vote, please, beginning with Jack.
Jack Creighton, aye.
Corey Evans, aye.
Diane Kennedy, aye.
Paul Schubert, aye.
Harry Thompson, aye.
Okay. And then the next vote would be for the historical, and we're going to clarify that in the warrant, also change that to historical preservation for the work being done on the Second Congregational Church in their facade preservation. I do have one question, Russ, that you might be able to answer, or Chris, which is sort of a mechanics. Is this done on a reimbursement basis? So we're not cutting them a check for $50,000, but we're approving their invoices.
What will happen is when work is done, a bill will be submitted.
You know,
You have
that's how it is on any of our projects.
Right.
We
Okay.
pay as they come in. It's kind of funny because a lot of times people will say, oh, gee, if we don't spend it all, we'll turn it back to you. And we have to explain to them until
You're not
spend
just getting it.
getting it. So,
Right, right. I mean, that gives me a little more comfort in supporting this, and also because it is a facade on the town common. And I we've been talking, every year there's some discussion about preserving the character around the common and the buildings around it, certainly with the town hall project, which we will be discussing on the 27th in great detail. I think that's I think that's a compelling reason. And I think Russ also kind of pushed me over the fence a little bit in knowing that what I know about the work that the Congregational Church in particular that has done in the community with ASP, and has, it really is a building and a community of people. So anyway, so if there's a motion to support it, and again, it doesn't have to be unanimous.
I would like to make a motion that the select board recommend the CPC funding for the Second Congregational Historic Preservation of the Facade at town meeting.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, roll call, please.
Any
Jack Creighton,
discussion?
aye.
I'm sorry.
Was there any discussion?
Oh, sorry. Is there any discussion?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, so could I just make one quick comment?
Please.
So, 10 years of Jesuit training, and I am perfectly fine with supporting churches, but I will find other ways to support a church other than using public funds. That's all. So that's my comment.
Thanks, Paul. Okay. So Jack, if you don't mind just revoting.
Oh, Jack Creighton, aye.
While Paul Schubert beats me 2 years of Jesuit training, Corey Evans, aye.
No Jesuit training, but lots of CCD. Diane Kennedy, aye.
Paul Schubert, nay.
Harry Thompson, aye.
Okay, great.
I have to
So
point out that I have no Jesuit training, no religious training, but I was at Woodstock.
Oh, that's way cooler.
It's a different religious experience.
Well, yeah.
Right. All right,
You
thank
may
you.
need to be exercised.
I look forward to a robust discussion at town meeting. These are the kinds of things that are very difficult for all of us to, vote on, to be honest with you. But we will carry this forward and see what our citizens think. So thank you all for your hard work. Russ and Tom and your committee. Really great work. Okay, I gotta find my agenda now that I still have a Wi-Fi signal. Capital improvements budget. Oh my gosh, we still have a long way to go.
I don't.
Reset.
Yeah,
Have a
bye-bye,
good
Russ.
night. Bye-bye.
Chris, you want to, capital improvements? So are we fully, or is capital made their votes on that?
Yes, so at this point, they voted on it. Well, the four that are still remaining are the enterprise funds. Here, let me share it really quickly. Yeah, these four are the sludge thickener, the activated carbon, granular activated carbon filter, Lily Pond chlorine conversion, and Lily Pond skid update. Those are all still to be looked at by capital budget. That's supposed to be happening, I think, in the next week or two. The others have all been voted. They were all voted except for one unanimously. That was the chipper. That was still 4-1. And then advisory voted to support, recommend all of them as well, unanimously, except for the bucket truck, and that was 6-2. So those are the votes. And I think you have this in the warrant.
And yep, and we discussed all of these last week. Does anybody have any questions in general on these? And if not, I'll ask for a motion to recommend to town meeting Article 9 as presented, minus the ones that we don't have votes on yet.
Make a motion to recommend to town meeting floor Article 14, I'm sorry, Article 9 capital improvement budget, aside from the two that are pending votes from advisory.
Second.
Clarification, is it two that are, there are four that are pending votes from capital budget?
Correction to the motion 4 that are pending votes.
Okay, is everybody clear? We have a motion and a second. Okay, great. All right, roll call, please.
Jack Creighton, aye.
Corey Evans, aye.
Diane Kennedy, aye.
Paul Schubert, aye.
Harry Thompson, aye.
Great. Okay, Article 7, which is supplemental appropriations. We reviewed those last week as
Yeah,
well.
there was a slight modification because of a change in the timing of a debt payment. It was all factored in the capital schedules. It needs to be officially supplementally appropriated to pay the debt as it comes due in June. And I do have a short memo from Don I can circulate, but this was reviewed last week and it was reviewed by advisory and they recommended to support it 8-0.
Okay, so that's you're talking about there was an adjustment to the adjusted debt payments, which number is 127,785, and the other one is the cable
right
transfer.
And the cable is probably going to change. It's going to go up. And again, this is the informational summary, the actual numbers, right?
Okay.
So that's going to go to the full amount because we have one more quarter coming in, and so
okay.
all the money to the 143. Don's just waiting for that. So by the time we get to town meeting, we'll have that updated number.
Okay. In the motions.
It was just the other one. So.
Okay, great. Any questions? Okay. Is there a motion to recommend Article 7 to town meeting?
I make a motion to recommend Article 7 to town meeting floor, supplemental appropriation for fiscal 2021.
Second?
Second.
Great. Okay. Roll call, please.
Jack Creighton, aye.
Corey Evans, aye.
Diane Kennedy, aye. Sorry.
Paul Schubert, aye.
Harry Thompson, aye.
Okay, next up is the same thing. We reviewed it last week. This is Article 11, the allocation of funds for one-time costs. I'm trying to think if there's anything in here that we didn't fully flesh out. I don't think there is. Okay. Any motion or questions, discussion?
Make a motion, we recommend to town meeting floor, Article 7, supplemental, Article 11, allocation of funds for one-time cost.
Second.
Second. Okay, we have a motion and a second, and just for everyone to know, advisory recommended approval by a vote of 8-0, except there was a 7-1 vote on the field court study recommendation. Do we know what the dissension was there, Chris?
Yes. Member Jenkins thought that the town engineer should do the design work and the assessments. And I said, well, they're more certainly capable of it. It was more of a timing function. They're working on very large projects for water and sewer and public works, and they would just never get to it. So if it was a timing issue, not that they're not important, but at the same time, Brian and Jason's time tends to be on the water and sewer projects where they save a lot of money. So after they talked about that, the board all said fine, but
Okay.
did not.
Great. Thank you. Okay. Help me. Did I
Motion and
ask
a
for a
second on the
motion?
floor.
Yeah, we have a
There's a
second.
motion and a second on the floor.
Yep.
All right.
Are we going to, Diane, are we going to separate those? Because I had brought up earlier that I thought that when the predecessor of this was a tennis court motion, and I had brought up at an earlier meeting that I thought that study should have been done by existing personnel. So,
Similar to what was discussed.
yeah,
So that's fine. We can take that one separately. Paul, if you want to just amend the motion to take out that $40,000 field court study, and we'll vote that separately.
So I'd like to amend the motion to accept the town court study on the
well, wait a
allocation.
minute. Can I ask some questions about that particular thing?
Sure.
Is that a study for all of the, it's unclear whether it's for all of the fields?
Yeah, Jack, it was expanded to not just be tennis courts, it's now baseball, lacrosse.
So this would be consistent with the baseball study and the need for fields?
Yes.
Okay, so that I'm fine with, because I called for that last Tuesday, that we should do that. So I'll rescind that, and as I guess,
I'll withdraw.
Never mind.
Amendment.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second on the floor to recommend Article 11, allocation of funds for one-time costs to town meeting. Okay, we'll go for a roll call vote.
Jack Creighton, aye.
Corey Evans, aye.
Diane Kennedy, aye.
Paul Schubert, aye.
Harry Thompson, aye.
Great, thank you. Okay, Town Hall renovation, Article 16, we're going to take up at the meeting on the 27th. They're still, all the committees are meeting about that, and we look forward to a good discussion there. And then we have Articles 3 and 4, which is the rate restructuring for both water and sewer. Separate articles. Chris, are we promoting anybody from either of those boards, or are you just going to walk us through this?
Let me see.
I think Tracy's looking too.
Yeah, I know Bill was out there earlier, but he's not there now. I don't see anybody from water.
See no one from water either.
No.
Has the other boards, and have they voted on it, or?
Yeah, yes. On the water, the advisory voted 8-0 to recommend, and in water voted 3-0 to recommend. So.
What's the pleasure of the board?
I'd like to hear what they have to say. I mean, this is such a completely encompasses, actual out-of-pocket expenses from every citizen in town, with the exception of parts of North Cohasset. I'd much rather have them here, because I'm not, I tend to support them, but I'd like to hear what they have to say before I vote.
You have some questions for them. Yeah,
Yeah.
Corey?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm more comfortable with it. I mean, I did, I observed the advisory meeting, a few of their meetings. I understand the logic, and they've been through a few rounds. The other thing that I think about is that this is kind of their lane. I mean, how our governance structure is the Water Commission, that's their lane. So, I'm comfortable moving forward with it. If they voted 3-0, that's their vote. And I think we can accept that as their word.
I know advisory, there was actually a joint meeting with advisory and the Water Commission, and there was an adjustment made to the rates being proposed due to the questions that were asked at advisory. So I too am comfortable, but again, I'd like to poll everyone. Again, it's all going to town meeting. Let the wild rumpus begin. Paul?
Yeah, I mean, I think it comes down to if anyone's comfortable with putting it forward to town meeting, it's going to be a rough and tumble town meeting. I think there'll be a lot of discussion on the floor. So I'll go either way. I mean, I certainly am willing to put it forward if the group wants to.
Can we submit it to the Diane, can we submit it to put it on the warrant without approving it? Yeah, Corey, I know I'm getting wishy-washy. I saw you.
Just you're choosing different words that.
So we've placed it on the warrant. So the question is, what is our recommendation to town meeting?
I mean, we could recommend it at town meeting, just the pre-town meeting is the other option.
Right, that's the thing. We can withhold, we can vote affirmatively, negatively, or we can withhold a vote. I will say the advantage to taking a vote is that the warrant goes out complete.
Right.
So, the residents in town that are participating in town meeting have a sense of where the boards came down on it, but we have voted things at town meeting in advance of it. So it's just something to consider. Chris? And
just procedurally, you do have till the 27th. So you can.
Yep, we could also vote it next week.
Yeah.
Carrie?
2 weeks. Yeah.
I'm fine with moving forward tonight, especially because the others have been unanimous votes, but if one of our members wants to hold on, I'm fine with that too. So I could go either way.
Okay.
I would like to make a motion that we, the select board, recommend Article 3 water rate restructuring to town meeting.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Any discussion?
I would like to amend Corey's motion that we put this off until the 27th, until we can have a representative from the water and the sewer at the select board.
Is there a
I'm
second to that?
amending Corey's.
I'm asking for a second on the amendment.
Well, I
Okay.
guess that settles that.
Hearing none, that settles that. We're going to take the recommendation to town meeting on the water rate restructuring to a vote, beginning with Jack.
I'm going to abstain.
Okay.
Corey Evans, aye.
Diane Kennedy, aye.
Paul Schubert, aye.
Harry Thompson, aye.
Okay. So we have a 4-0-1. Believe me, nobody wants to raise rates.
Look, I'm well aware. Tomorrow
It's gonna be a
morning,
good
I'll
one
have
on town
no
meeting.
water and I'll have no sewer service. I get that.
Okay, similarly, the sewer rate restructuring. And that is a 10%, I believe. No, a modest, is that correct?
Yes, 10%, Diane, that's the number.
So I'm just looking on the informational summary, Chris. Did we receive that from the sewer commission?
Yeah, this came from the sewer commission. We might need to ask them to publish a little bit.
I don't think I think it should be neutral. I don't think it should be newsy or plus or minus. It should be the facts. And the 10% isn't clear in this. It says a 0.6% for this year. I think we need to clarify the language in that. When it's going to drop, when the rate would go into effect, and how it would, if it's a gradual rate table. And again, I think the rate table should probably be.
There's only one rate. There's no table. That's
Okay. Okay.
It's always the entire rate table. It's
Got it.
everyone pays the
Okay.
same thing. So
So as long as everybody understands what the actual increase is year to year, if it's 10% for, in perpetuity till it changes or whatever, it's just going up to one number then that's what it is. I just make that clear in the informational summary. Paul?
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, the informational summary, it's bringing in electrical cost. I mean, it has to be a bullet point of what the information that the town voters are going to need, not any other, and explain to them what their vote will mean. That's it. Thanks.
Yeah, I think they can write the promotional language and present it at town meeting, but I'd like to keep the warrant pretty much stuck to the facts and a summary of. Great. Corey?
If we do a vote to recommend, are we recommending the informational summary as well, or can that be changed after the fact?
It's
separate, correct?
Yeah, I'll
Okay.
fix you got to get another look at the entire warrant with cleaner information summaries too.
Right.
We comments on them. It's your warrant, so you can make them say different things.
Yes, and also ultimately it's the motions that are the critical action that town meeting takes. This is really a larger context and summary agenda, if you will, of the topic. So, if for some reason we felt something was wackadoodle, when we get to the motion stage of things, we can make different decisions at that time. So, okay. Any other discussion? Otherwise, is there anyone who would like to make a motion on Article 4?
My only discussion is I'm going to have the same issue that I had with the other one, and I'd like to see a representative here before we vote. But I'm assuming that as we read as I read my fellow select board members, that I won't get a second there. So just want to confirm that, and so we won't have to go through that, and I'll just abstain.
And we can also have that discussion later after the warrant closes, for our own edification, so we can talk about
Oh,
it.
I will, and I've talked to water and I've talked to sewer a lot on all of that. So I will probably ultimately support it.
Right.
But
Cool.
anyway, for sake of time, make the motion and
Go from there. Thanks, Corey.
I think I'm on Jack's side on this one because, water, there was a lot of information, a lot of detail, a lot of stuff. Sewer, I think that there's still some missing data points that could be brought to the town to make it more clear why this is required. I mean, water went through a lot of revisions and a lot of stuff and made it clear that this was really necessary. I don't quite feel the same way about sewer yet, so I would also like to hear.
Okay, I actually agree with that. And maybe we can have the sewer.
I move we put this off until the 27th.
Yep.
Can I have a second?
We don't even have to vote that, but we can. So
I think we're all fine with that. We don't need to. I think we're fine.
Come on, deny me.
And I'll talk to the sewer commission about coming in. I mean, water, this is the second or third year that we've been discussing the water rate study that they formally conducted. So I think that isn't a distinction.
Sewer commission, they have worked very, very hard, and they've had a lot of really difficult issues. So I hold them in great admiration.
Absolutely. Okay, great. We'll bring them in. Well, we're in really good shape. Thank you all for your patience tonight. It is late, much later than I anticipated, but we got through a lot of work. We have just our own updates and Chris.
If I may, so poor Brianna Bennett, who's the intern assigned to alternative energy, got skipped over earlier because she wanted to talk a little bit about the electric car celebration part of Earth Day. So there she is. She's been very patient, and I promised her I'd.
Oh, Brianna, I'm so sorry. That was at 6:20 this morning, or this whatever, 5 days ago, whatever. Thank you for your patience. So sorry.
I'm happy to hear about the warrant articles.
Are you really though?
Yep.
Thank you.
I don't want to keep you all too late tonight, so I'll try to keep it brief. I'm just here to talk about the Cohasset EV ceremony that was kind of floated a couple weeks ago to the select board. And we've put together a more concrete proposal. So instead of a ceremonial ribbon cutting and a car parade, we're kind of focusing on the ribbon cutting and then maybe getting some electric vehicles together to take photographs after at the stations that can then be published to the public. We'd like to live stream the event to the public, so we won't be promoting in-person access to the event. We'd like it to take place on Sunday, April 25th from 12 p.m. to about 12:30 at the Paul Pratt Memorial Library. We have alternative locations where there's other chargers, but I think that this location has the best aesthetic view for the ribbon cutting. And then the virtual event will have a Zoom webinar that'll be live streamed onto the Town of Cohasset YouTube and hopefully the Town of Cohasset Facebook. So we'll have multiple avenues for access. And then it'll just be a good celebration of the electric chargers that Cohasset secured in town. There's going to be the ceremony at the library. We'll commemorate the new chargers. And any guest speakers for the event will be asked to submit virtual pre-recorded videos. And then the in-person ribbon cutting will probably just feature the town manager and the alternative energy chair, Tanya Bodell.
Great.
And any of you who want to attend in a safe way, as long as Dr. Schubert says it's okay. So.
Yes, we would, any of you, and if you'd like to give a speech, you know, you could probably make the argument you can do it in person, but I would recommend you make a virtual speech, and I'm hoping to be the Zoom coordinator for the event, so I can play it for the public.
Absolutely. That sounds fantastic. Comments, questions? Thank you. I'm so sorry that you waited around for 3 hours.
Thank you for waiting.
Of course.
Yeah.
Brianna is very dedicated.
Yeah, this is great. And I think, you know, Carrie always articulates this better than I will, but just any opportunity to get the work that we're doing in town out to the community through social media channels is great. So thank you for that. All right. Any comments? Do you need any kind of approval, Chris, or?
No, it's not that
update?
big. It just was really just to let all of you know, you're all obviously all welcome. As Brianna said, you can attend, do a video. There's 8 charging locations, the front of the library, the back by rec, up at the high school, and also in the town parking, the main village parking lot by the, what will be the teen center in the fall. It's right now. So plus the ones behind town hall. So there's now 10 charging stations around town.
Yeah, terrific. Okay.
All grant funded, by the way. So
even better.
So that means the grants pay for the electricity?
No, they pay for the installation.
Okay.
The point you did, I think you raised this about, about whether the town will at one point want to charge for this. It can. At this point, I don't know if anyone's doing it yet because the demand, once it becomes there, it's something that the town can most certainly consider.
So at this point, the town is giving out free electricity.
Yes, the use of the charging station is free. Yes,
thought the town should know that.
Yes.
Great.
And we do have those amounts that we can report on at a future meeting too. It's all being tracked in ChargePoint. So we kind of we're seeing a steady increase in the number of users using the electric vehicles. So it might be something that you want to take up in the coming weeks after we've really, open up the charging stations to see how many people use it, what you'd like to be charging the residents.
Absolutely. Great. Thank you. Thanks, Brianna.
That's my report.
Good. All right, April 25th, 12 to 12:30, virtual, mostly. All right, Chris, do you have anything to add? All right, select board comments.
No comment. It's
Okay,
late.
Corey?
Small comments. Just thank you to my fellow colleagues and the others that participated in the discussion about second congregational. I think that's the kind of discussions that we really need to have in a way we need to have them. So thank you all for that. However, my soapbox for the day is not next week, but the week after. April 24th is National Drug Take Back Day, which is being promoted by Safe Harbor. It is a nationwide program to turn in any unused prescription drugs. It is well known that the majority of misused prescription pain relievers or stimulants or whatever actually come from leftover stock. And getting rid of that stock is a great way to keep our community safe. We are lucky in our community. The police, the Cohasset police station has a drop box for these things year round, but April 24th is the day to put that on your mind, go through your cabinet, get rid of anything that is left over, and keep everybody safe. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Corey. Paul?
I'm good. Things are so far so good.
Carrie?
It's not too late to pull papers for our town election. People have a few days left to turn in signatures. And in my opinion, no election at any level of a ballot ever should go unopposed. So I always think that there should be competition. I never think people should run unopposed for anything. And unfortunately, that happens a lot at our municipal level in Massachusetts and at our state level. So I think we need to do better at that. So this is my plug for people who might be thinking about pulling papers. Go do it.
Great. Thanks, Carrie.
And then just to be, the
Yep.
deadline is tomorrow. Close
Yeah.
the business. To pull the papers, you have to return them by Friday. That's the.
Okay. Two quick things. One is that on this Thursday night, April 15th at 7 p.m. via Zoom, and the link is on our town website, is the Elm Street Corridor Working Group public engagement session, and I highly encourage everybody to participate. I had a member of the public, a friend of mine, send me an email the other day and said, why aren't you dealing with some other area of town? And the truth is, this came out of the master plan when we had a lot of public discussion. So I encourage everybody to spread the word among your networks to get people to participate in this. Is a really key link between the harbor and the village, and please join in and get the Zoom link on our website. And then lastly, and we'll have a presentation for this when we have less of a full agenda, but there's a group of residents in town who are putting together a one-table Cohasset cookbook. And it's pretty exciting what they're doing, and they want people from all over town, or restaurant owners or chefs or just individuals that have lived here forever and have a good old seafood recipe that Nana made, or any of you that have new recipes in your rotation. There's a website, it's onetablecohasset.com. So I encourage everybody to check it out. And they're going to publish a beautiful book, hopefully by the holidays, and the proceeds will support a local nonprofit. So just wanted to plug that, One Table Cohasset, and we'll get a presentation from them some other time. It's a great community effort. So with that, we have minutes from 4/6/2021. If anybody would like to move those.
I move that we approve the minutes from 4/6/2021.
Okay, is there a
Second.
second? Okay, roll call, please.
Jack Creighton abstaining until such time as we get proper electronic records of our meetings.
Thank you.
Corey Evans, aye.
Diane Kennedy, aye.
Paul Schubert, aye.
Carrie Thompson, aye.
Okay, I have no other topics, so I'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, roll call.
Jack Creighton, aye.
Corey Evans, tired, aye.
Diane Kennedy, aye.
Paul Schubert, aye.
Carrie Thompson, aye.
Okay, thank you.
all.
Thank you all.
Okay.
Good night. Good work.
Good night, all. Good meeting.
And everybody.
We had fun.